Busted. Busted, chat. Let's try again. Welcome, chat. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday. Hope y'all are doing well. So we've got a couple of things for y'all today. We're going to do a quick lecture about ADHD and succeeding in the workplace. So there was a super cool post on our subreddit. Unfortunately, someone's in a difficult situation, and it's something that I've encountered a lot. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how to potentially understand your ADHD and how to better succeed in the workplace. So really, really relevant, I think, to a lot of people in our community. Couple of other things. We're doing a interview with someone who has been shut in for, I think, the last 5 years. So we're just going to be learning a little bit about what this person's experience of life is. I think this is something that's becoming increasingly common in our society. So, there's this is sort of famous or became notorious in Japan with hikikomoris, which are like shut-ins. But I think what's happened, especially since the pandemic, is more and more people are spending more and more time within a particular house or domain. And so we just want to hear from that person and understand what their experience of life is like and maybe learn something from them. So that's what we're doing today. How are y'all doing? I don't think today's guest is a Japanese person, or maybe they are. Who knows? I have no idea. I think the main thing is that we mentioned hikikomori because I think that's the first time that someone coined this term, or at least as far as I know. It was sort of the original concept was captured with a Japanese word, and then that spread and started to get used in other languages. And then, yeah. So I don't think that, I have no idea what the ethnicity of the person is, and maybe we'll find out, and maybe we won't. Thanks for the love from Hawaii. Appreciate it. Ooh, good questions. Okay. What do I think about the I Ching? What an awesome question. Let me think about this. Okay, so do y'all want to talk about weird stuff for a little while? We can talk about weird stuff. Okay, so let's talk for a second about meditation and spirituality in the spectrum of science to esoteric stuff, okay? And by the way, our interview is in an hour, so we've got time, okay? So a long time ago, we're probably talking somewhere between 5,000 and 9,000 years ago, not really sure. There were a group of people who discovered this practice of meditation. And chances are meditation developed in what we now think of as the geographical region of India. I don't know if that's historically 100% accurate. There may be other ethnicities that want to claim meditation as their own. That's fine. I think it's not really that important. Just from a historic perspective, there was this guy that in the Hindu tradition became divine. And that person was Shiva. And this person is also called Adi Yogi. So there's this picture of this dude who's wearing this animal skins and things like that. So chances are it's old, right? So this was before there was woven cloth. And so this guy figured something out. He's probably spent some time in the Himalayas, may have used particular herbs and things like that. And then figured out weird things about the universe. So he sort of discovered meditation and started teaching it to people. And so since then, meditation has developed and it's kind of developed into a lot of different directions. And nowadays, what tends to happen is that we've sort of scientifically appropriated meditation. So we sort of developed this concept of mindfulness, which I think was a brilliant innovation. So let's understand where mindfulness came from. There's this guy named John Kabat-Zinn that I think largely popularized this, although that too, other people may claim the term. So he was a researcher, and he noticed something that was a huge problem with meditation research, which was that we don't really know how to standardize it, right? So like if someone's doing transcendental meditation from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and someone else is doing whatever branded TM meditation from whatever other person, how can we as a scientific community like understand the core of what this practice is? And so they developed mindfulness, and I think his work was really revolutionary because he sort of said, okay, what are like the core, most basic components of meditation? So that we can sort of like translate, okay, does this thing meet these core components? If so, then it sort of fits the research criteria. So it was really a research thing, right? So it's like the core aspects of meditation. So when we did that, so it was great because it allowed us to like now study meditation in a standardized way. And we even called it something else. We started calling it mindfulness, okay? And so when we called it mindfulness, what we referred to is like, it's not this weird spiritual, esoteric enlightenment stuff. It's just being aware in the present moment in a non-judgmental manner, okay? That's all it is. Now, when we did that, we also removed all the other weird esoteric spiritual stuff, right? And so that's like, what's kind of weird is I think it was great and revolutionary, but we lost something really important, which is that no one's talking about enlightenment anymore. Like everyone for literally thousands of years, the goal of this practice is to attain a state of consciousness and like recognize the divine and all this kind of other weird stuff. And we just lost all of that. Right. And that's why I think that, and we lost all the advanced practices too, because the mindfulness is the most basic practice, but everything above that is the weird esoteric stuff, like tantra and like, you know, mantras and kundalini yoga and like all these weird, like esoteric, you know, astral travel. And we lost like all this other weird non-scientific stuff. Now, and this is also important to recognize, is that that stuff isn't by definition non-scientific. It's just that science tends to start at the front, right? So we kind of start at the beginning, and it's like, okay, what's the most basic thing that we can verify about meditation? And that's mindfulness. Because let's remember also that science for about 100 years said that meditation doesn't do anything for mental health or physical health or whatever. It's a spiritual practice that has no health benefits. Let's remember that the scientific community believed that for a very long time. And then research started in the 60s and stuff. We started to get some scientific validation, but the further up you go, the deeper you go into the traditions, the harder it is to study these things, okay? So what about all the other stuff, the weird stuff? And this is where the I Ching comes in. So in the meditative traditions, there are methods of divination. So this is like, the I Ching is a good example of this. So the I Ching is like the book of changes, and it's some kind of weird divination device that lets you like see the future. And this is where like people are like, how on earth can you see the future? Like, what's up with that? Like, there's no way. And that's where, you know, I've seen some weird things in my explorations of meditation that have made me realize that just because science does not understand it now does not mean that it is untrue. Because that's what science said about meditation as a whole, right? They said, hey, there's like, we don't understand it, therefore it is incorrect. I've sort of learned that science is great because what's good about it is that it is the most consistent way to evaluate whether stuff is BS or not. That's the big advantage. Because how do you know whether dowsing or the I Ching or, you know, like astrology or like all these other random like reading tea leaves at the bottom of your cup, tarot, how do you know which one like, are all those the same? Are they equally effective? Can any of them see the future? Can all of them see the future? Or some better than others? This is why we need to use the scientific process to evaluate them. But until we have done a thorough scientific evaluation, I think we've got to be a little bit careful about saying that it doesn't work just because we don't understand the mechanism through which it theoretically works. And so this is where, kind of going back to meditation, my experience has been that as you meditate, it's weird, but you start to recognize, you start to gain knowledge that I would say is like transcendent. And people are like, what the hell does that mean? Well, normally the way that we gain knowledge is through like external sources, right? So like I'll read a book and then I'll like learn something from the book. But as you meditate more and more, you start to have, I would say it starts with something that's akin to intuition, right? So where you like kind of have a feeling about something. And if we think about what is intuition from a neurological perspective, intuition is probably your brain processing a lot of information that you're not consciously aware of. And that happens all the time. So even things like creativity, there are good biological theories that can explain things like creativity, which is that there's a lot of stuff going on in your brain that we don't understand and that we're not conscious to. But by the way, even though we don't know how it works and we don't really know where it's happening and we can't really show you that it's happening, we're sure it's happening in the brain, right? So you got to think about that for a second. Wait, hold on a second. But how do you know? Well, because nothing else makes sense. Well, hold on a second. We don't know actually where creativity happens in the brain, for example, right? So we know a lot about it. So we know that, for example, people with bipolar disorder actually are more creative than the average person. So like we know that there's some neurological correlations. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the brain that we're not aware of. So when you meditate for a long time, you start to enter these states of mind. And this is weird, but this is like literally what happens, right? And as you enter these states of mind, from those states of mind, you start to have like these understandings and this, I would call it transcendent knowledge, because it's stuff that you have no logical way to know what you know. So it just seems to come from somewhere. And it's an experience. That's the other thing to keep in mind, is that this is like the foundation of this stuff is like, I don't know whether it makes sense. It's just you have this weird knowledge that you didn't have before. And that's just what happens. Like, and it happens pretty consistently, because this is something that's been described for thousands of years, where like, even if you read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are considered like a really awesome text on, meditation, by the way, right? Sort of like the seminal text on yoga. He talks about, hey, and by the way, if you want, the knowledge of the time of your death, like you should do samyama on like this particular thing. And if you want knowledge of this thing, like, being able, knowledge of the past lives, you should do samyama on this kind of thing. And so he's just like, hey, by the way, if you meditate on these things, these are the kind of things that you're going to learn. Now, and if you do those kinds of practices, like I think people will, I wouldn't say consistently, because I think those practices are hard, but it is not uncommon for people to gain knowledge from other sorts of sources. And now we get into but then the question kind of becomes, okay, so like, what do I believe in the I Ching? I don't believe in the I Ching. I think that if a normal person sits down with the I Ching and starts to like read it, I don't think you're going to be able to see the future. I think part of the problem with a lot of the astrological practices is that there isn't whatever we call spiritual. I have no idea what this is scientifically, but there's a certain amount of spiritual development which is usually required to effectively use some of those tools. And I've worked with some astrologers that have been like creepily accurate. We're not talking about cold reading kind of stuff, because like I read into that kind of thing and stuff like that. And there's a really simple test, by the way. If you guys want a really simple scientific test on an astrologer or someone who reads the future, if they know nothing about you, right? You meet them and you just ask them, tell me about the last 5 years of my life. What has happened? And that's where like, because you actually have the data. If we think about the biases around astrology and future reading stuff, people are vague. There's some kind of availability bias at play. They may use some techniques like cold reading and like, paying attention to micro expressions and stuff like that. And they're going to kind of like tell you about your future. And then there's like no way to test it. But there's a really simple way to test astrology. You just ask them to tell you about your past, and go in with like 2 of your friends and see if what they say applies to the other 2. So is what they say, is it generic enough to where both of your friends that are there are like, yeah, this applies to me. He's talking about my past. Or are they like, this is crazy. This has nothing to do with me. Right? It's a really simple way to test it. And through my experience, I've worked with some people who like have claims of being divinatory kind of people. And most of them, I'd say 80 to 90% of them are not great at it. But I've met a couple that I was like, wow, that's kind of bizarre. Like that you accurately understood very, very, very specific things about my life. Like it's really bizarre. Including like particular months, like this month of this year, 3 years ago, where I was like hospitalized or something like that. They were like, yeah, like there was like a really bad medical illness in like March of like 2000 or 1998 or something like that. And I was like, that's oddly specific. And so, do I believe in the I Ching? Like, not really. But I think that there's a lot that we don't know. I think that there's a lot about the meditative tradition and how we sort of gain knowledge. And I think that if you like train your mind in some of these like transcendental techniques, like there's some cool stuff that happens. Does it work? I mean, I encourage you to be scientific and skeptical, but also open-minded. And so just tricks and statistics, Exa Weber is saying, so that's also where, let's talk about statistics for a second. If we look at the statistics of things like p-values and statistical significance, if I see 100 astrologers, just by random chance, like 5% of them are going to be right. Right? So if you keep on seeing a bunch of people, like eventually you'll find someone who will get it. And that doesn't necessarily indicate that the person is right. It just means that if enough people throw darts, like someone will hit where they're supposed to. So that's like a really important consideration. So when I say like, I'm talking about 2 out of maybe like 15 or 16 is their hit rate, right? Yeah. So that's another consideration to think about. Yeah, so it's... so I have a question, why mainly women believe in astrology? The first question that I've got in Saladi is, when you say mainly women, I'm curious about the statistics that you're talking about. I know that there is a perception that women are more into in astrology than men, but I don't know that mainly women, like what does that mean? 70% of women? Or are you saying that of the people that believe in astrology, most of them are women? Or are you saying that most women believe in astrology? What does that mean? There's a lot of specificity there. Stephen Sagiball is saying he ran a Harvard study to prove it. What are we talking about? Stephen Sagiball. So this is a good question. So why can't logic be enough in spirituality? Because spirituality is about experience, not about logic. Right? So these are two completely different things. So logic is an abstraction and is an intellectual exercise that can be correct or can be incorrect. And the problem is that depending on who you're talking to, the logic may be sound or unsound. So the biggest problem with logic is that the mind that produces it could be flawed, right? And you'll see this all the time because you'll get like two sides of a political argument where both sides are 100% convinced that they're logically correct. And you're convinced that the other person is logically correct. So what's the problem? The problem is that the mind that is conceiving of the logic is flawed. So spirituality's roots are not in logic, they're in experience. So if you think about like, what is love? Like you can logic out to a certain degree, like what love is. You can talk about neuroscience and things like that. Like there's a lot that you can learn from logic, but there's also the experience of it, which is just a different dimension of like information. Yeah, I mean, so so Jordan Peterson talks about this. Yeah, I think that, I mean, he's not the only, like, yeah, I think that's a common understanding that people have, right? So science is about observing the external world. Like we look at things like gravity and stuff like that. You can also use science on the internal world. So that's what I think is super cool, is that it's not restricted to the external world. And if you look at like yogis, they used a very scientific process of like develop a hypothesis and test it, which we're going to talk about even like today, for example. But you can develop hypotheses and test things within yourself, but experience is different from logic. They're just different buckets. There's no way that you can logic your way to an experience. You can you can arrive at the conclusion that a strawberry is objectively better than a blueberry, but you can't ever get the taste of a strawberry through reading a textbook or looking at a logical proof or things like that. And thus far, maybe someone will figure out how to jump the bridge from logic to spirituality. And so if we look at the knowledge from spirituality and the knowledge of logic, logic is essentially created within the human mind. And spirituality is really gained from transcending mind. So human beings are capable of things that are beyond mind. I absolutely looked at all of your YouTube suggestions, and it got me super excited. Senior South, I'm very grateful. So we're like taking a whole new direction with stuff that we're going to do. I do not talk, Steve87R is saying, please talk about any mystical experiences you had while meditating. I try not to talk about those for a couple of reasons. One is that if I talk about a spiritual experience in meditation, I think it's harmful. And the reason it's harmful is because it'll create an expectation in the mind of someone else. And then when you sit down to meditate, your ability to gain that same experience is actually going to be harder because you have the expectation of what you should be getting. And that expectation exists within the mind, and then you won't be able to transcend mind because you're looking for something. So I tend not to discuss them. If there's a good context where it becomes relevant, that's okay. Second reason I don't discuss experiences in meditation is because it tends to be gratifying towards the ego, right? And so I try to avoid those kinds of things. And then the third reason that I don't discuss them, and this sounds weird, but if you guys want an honest, is it diminishes my own spiritual energy to share my spiritual experiences. So the reasons, personal and selfish. And that's a whole, yeah. I mean, I get that people are curious about it, right? But if you're curious about it, instead of hearing about how much I love eating strawberries, like you should go and try one, right? Start meditating. Yeah, so we have a guide to meditation, y'all, and that's why we built it. So part of the reason, what we've sort of discovered is that we can stream about stuff, but then like we're answering the same questions over and over and over again. Like I probably, not this precise way, but we've talked about all these concepts on stream maybe like half a dozen times over the course of like 3 years, right? Maybe even more. And so for people who like want the full answer set of like, what's question one? Like, what are the different kinds of meditation? How do I start a meditative practice? Like, that's why we built the guide. It's because there's a linear, not even linear, you can pick the parts that you want. So even depending on your goal, it's like, I am meditating, or so this is something that we'll ask is like, why are you meditating? Like, what are you interested in? I'm interested in like overcoming my ego. I'm interested in becoming more successful. I'm interested in like understanding my mind. And each of those has a different track of meditation. And people will say, how do I find out which practice is right for me? Well, you kind of like, you try different things and we can guide you. So pay attention to your mind because each of us has a unique cognitive fingerprint. And this is the problem that I had kind of when I was studying to become a monk is like, I didn't pick a particular tradition. I studied in like a dozen different traditions. The reason that I did that is because I noticed that like, this is not perfect for me. And the real problem that I found in meditative traditions is that I don't think I ever really met a well-established meditation tradition that if I was having difficulty, they said, yeah, the problem is with our technique. You should go learn from someone else. Well, the answer that I always got was you need to try harder or we'll help you and you can work. You need to be diligent. You need to be patient. You need to be focused. So it was sort of like I was walking into an Italian restaurant and they were like, yeah, if you don't like the Italian food, keep eating it. You'll develop a taste. No one ever said, oh, maybe you should try something else based on who you are and what your tastes are. So it looks like somebody rated. Ambiguous Amphibian rated with 743 viewers. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for the raid, Amphibious Amphibian. Can enlightenment be gained without meditation? 100%. 100%. You could even make a good argument that the only way to become enlightened is without meditation. Yeah. Right? So I don't know if you guys know, this is a great story from Buddha. And then we'll get to the post, and then we'll get to the thing. But so, Buddha tried really hard to become enlightened for like a long time. Sacrificed everything, went to the brink of death, and like still was not enlightened, and went to lots of different teachers. And then he was like, none of this crap is working. I give up. Screw this. I'm done. And then he goes and he sits under, I think, the Bodhi tree or the people tree. I forget which one, what kind of tree. And then he's like, F it. None of this will ever work. And he sits down. He's like, I'm done. And then he becomes enlightened. Right? So, yeah. So Mika3 is asking, what would you advise for Vata? Trying Anulom Vilom for 2 weeks and going beyond 10 minutes is so hard. The mind just goes ballistic with how long is left. Do a different practice. This is precisely what I'm talking about, right? So the key about meditation is to find a practice that feels natural to you. And if you can't do 10 minutes at a stretch, then that's okay. Like the reason that we do Nadi Shuddhi is to balance our pranayam so that we can do other practices. Nadi Shuddhi isn't even really a meditation practice. Are there studies that Buddhists are happier than non-Buddhists? I don't know. I haven't looked at that. Leaf Eater II is saying, is that Buddha story an instance of paradoxical intention? Maybe. I don't know what that term means, but probably. Meditation is too boring for me. What to do? Try yoga or Tai Chi. They can be forms of meditation. Move, right? Try to balance on one foot for like a few minutes with your eyes closed. Let's see if that's boring. What do I think about meditation apps? So I think meditation apps can be good for what they are, which is a good way to anchor you in practice. I think, though, that depending on what your goals are, the app will get you so far. So I think the apps are good at is like anchoring you in a practice and consistency. There are some concerns that I have around apps. So for example, apps, like especially the ones that have a lot of guided meditations, they sort of do the heavy lifting for you, right? So if you think about doing a different guided meditation every day, like someone is guiding you into that state of consciousness, but you require their guidance to get there. So what I've sort of found is that there's consistency with practice. There's like a big difference between someone else like playing a new piano song so that you can sit and listen and really like enjoy it, and then you learning how to play the piano and you playing the piano every single day and you playing the same song every single day so that you can be a true master of the song. That being said, I think the more people that meditate, I think the happier they'll be and the better the world will be. So how do you find a good meditation or yoga teacher? Should they understand its ties with Hinduism or Buddhism? I don't think so. So here's the beautiful thing about yoga and meditation. If you practice them, you don't need to learn about the principles of Hinduism and Buddhism. You'll discover them yourself. So I had a patient that was from a particular country where like eating meat is like a very normal thing. Like it's a huge part of their diet, right? It's like the thought of being vegetarian is completely alien. I didn't try to teach him about like yoga or meditation or any of this stuff. We just taught him meditation. We were working on whatever clinical stuff they needed. And like after a year and a half, he was like, I've stopped eating meat. And I was like, what do you mean you stopped eating? He's like, I just didn't like the way that it made me feel. Like it made like meditation harder, and it like I'll eat it like maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, and they just sort of give it up on their own. And so the cool thing is if you're diligent with your practice and you're dedicated to your practice, then the benefits will come. And it's not that you have to learn that other stuff. And the real tragedy is that there are a lot of people who are Hindu and who are Buddhist who I don't think really follow the tenets of the religion. And that's true of all religions, right? They're like people who are hypocrites in the religion. And so knowledge of the thing is not the same as being like spiritual. And so this is where it's like, if you do yoga diligently, like, you'll discover things about your body. You'll discover things about your energy level. As you meditate with diligence and practice, you'll discover things about your mind. That's how it works. The reason that I actually like those traditions is because they tell you, they're the ones that really say, like, hey, by the way, there is no one place for all the answers, but we will give you practices and experiments. And if you want the answers ahead of time, you can get them, but that's not going to fix anything. What you really need to do is explore it for yourself and do it for yourself. Right? Yeah, so someone's saying yoga and mindfulness is very commercialized. It is. And let's remember that that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because what has been the impact of commercializing yoga and mindfulness? Why do all of y'all, so think about the country that you live in. Do you know what yoga and mindfulness are? Where would it be if it was not commercialized? Right? So for many, many years, they were not commercialized. And then people started commercializing them. And then it started spreading. So all things have a place. Do I think it's been over-commercialized? Maybe. Do I think there are problems with the way it has been commercialized in the past? 100%. And let's remember that commercialization is one of the ways in which the world works. And that through commercialization, sometimes we spread things. And spreading things isn't necessarily bad. Right? So can you meditate wrong? Saw some meditation school bring up that as selling point for their courses. Yeah, I absolutely think you can meditate wrong. I think the challenge, though, is that I don't think one technique is necessarily meditating right, but you can understand what the basics of meditation are. And there are a lot of people like, so for example, if I say, yeah, I'm going to go and, I don't know, like I'm going to go and bully random people on the street, and that's going to be my meditation. I don't think that's meditating right. I think that you can call something meditation and it not being meditation. That's like very reasonable, right? That there are things that are not correct with meditation. There's stuff that I think it's absurd to call meditation. And I think that there is, you can do it wrong. Anyway, let's get to our lecture. Let's talk about ADHD. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. This is fun, chat. It's nice hanging out with y'all. Because we have an interview in about 20 minutes, okay? So we gotta speed run this a little bit. Okay. This one. Okay. So, how to cope with being told you can't be a software engineer because of ADHD or executive dysfunction. My supervisor told me I couldn't be a software engineer due to my executive function ADHD symptoms, despite having 2 years of experience and passing a performance improvement plan. In my most recent interview, my supervisor said my performance was decent. However, during a meeting, they admitted that they had difficulty giving me tasks that are easy, and they have been only giving me tasks they deemed easy. I assume that means hard. Which is infuriating because how can they know if I can't do something if they've only given me easy tasks? And they said they found I struggled doing tasks if incomplete or unclear requirements were given. This is important. Pay attention to this, okay? They also mentioned a recent mistake I made, which showing a data table with incorrect relationship, which I think they blew out of proportion because I've had tons of correct relationships before. Admittedly, I do get overwhelmed when something has too many steps or too many logic decisions, but I did eventually still finish my tasks on time after tons of asking questions. Another thing to keep in mind. Whenever I said to them I can improve, all they said was, this is a finance industry. We don't have time to wait for you to improve. I don't know why they're so convinced I would actually improve slowly when they barely actually give me harder tasks to see my potential. They've now restricted me to only testing tasks, which I find wasteful. I wonder if my impulsiveness and executive dysfunction, which causes me to ask many questions, is the reason for their decision. Despite the shortage of staff, they seem unwilling to give me more challenging tasks, even though I've corrected my mistakes. and completed many successful bug fixes. I'm not willing to spend my career only doing testing tasks because it seems such a waste of coding skills, especially front-end skills that I learned. I don't want to completely let go of what I've worked hard for, aka coding, and do zero of them. It is indeed making things hard for me. So another thing to keep in mind is this person never disclosed that they had ADHD. So this is a really common experience for people with ADHD, where they are told, they go to a particular work environment, and they're told, hey, you can't succeed as a ... as a software engineer, as a surgeon, as a retail food server, or like working in retail or working in food service. There are all kinds of people who get told because of your ADHD, whether they know that they have ADHD or not, you can't succeed in this job. So is that the case? And this is what I would say, absolutely not. So let's talk a little bit about how to succeed professionally if you have ADHD. Now I'm going to start with like, okay, why on earth do I believe this, right? Because people are like, they have these experiences. These experiences are legitimate. So that's because I'm a clinician, and I've had colleagues who have ADHD who work at places like Massachusetts General Hospital, who are surgeons and associate professors of surgery at the Harvard Medical School, and they have ADHD and they can succeed as a surgeon. We've also worked with tons of coders, and I would actually say that ADHD is very common in coding, and who are very, very successful. And I've worked in people of all kinds of professions who have had ADHD who have been very successful. And so the question becomes, why is it that people think that, why do people say, okay, if you've got ADHD, you can't succeed? Now, we have to acknowledge that if you have ADHD, there are particular work environments, and maybe even the average, or definitely the average work environment, where you are at a disadvantage because the environment is not structured for you to succeed. So what we're going to do today is understand, first of all, that it's not a particular profession, but the particular job that may be hard to succeed in. It is the structure of the job. The second thing is we're going to go through some of the executive function deficits and things that you can implement to be successful at your job. Okay, so how can you structure things in a particular way to where you do not fall victim to your own ADHD? So let's start by looking at jobs. So people will say things like software development, right? Or surgery, or freelance, I don't know, graphic design. These are all professions. Can I succeed if I have ADHD? The answer is probably yes, okay? I was about to say absolutely yes, but there may be particular scenarios where who knows, depending on the severity of what your illness is. So let's understand why people believe they can't succeed. So this has to do with the structure of the job. So this is where, for example, like if you look at people with ADHD, what they need is structure. And why do they need structure? They need structure because their brain isn't capable of doing particular things. So let's understand, actually, let me just get rid of the structure here, what the deficits in ADHD are. So one is a problem with attention. Okay. Impulsivity. Executive dysfunction. Okay. And what we're going to talk about here is operationalization. So what does operationalization? What does executive dysfunction mean? So when you have a normal brain, a neurotypical brain, and you give it an abstract task. Okay, we're going to start with number 3. The brain can break down the task into its components and actually execute them. So if I tell someone, hey, pack for a trip, this is an abstract task that has all kinds of different components. It's find a suitcase, maybe order some new clothes, look at your clothes, pack your clothes, wash your clothes, pack electronics, download shows for the plane ride over, set up your cell phone plan so that it works over there. There's 1,000 different things that I have to do to prepare for a trip. And if we have a normal brain, our brain knows how to take this abstract task and divide it into its components. Okay? If you have a neurodivergent brain, this is a problem for you. So like you get overwhelmed by all the different 1,000 things you have to do, and you can't even get started with a single one. Whereas if you have a neurotypical brain, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And even people with neurotypical brains will use tools. Because even if you've got a neurotypical brain, it's going to be kind of like this. Okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a to-do list. This one is going to go over here. Then I'm going to put this one here. I'm going to put this one here. And then I have to actually use a to-do list to organize things. Okay? So the first problem is if you are in an environment where you are being given incomplete or unclear requirements and you have ADHD, you will struggle. So what do you do about this? Let's just talk about it, right? So this is where there's a particular technique that I teach people. So if you get overwhelmed, let's understand this. This is due to executive dysfunction. Okay? And you get overwhelmed because of unclear requirements. This is and let's understand that there are some jobs that will do this part for you that are not vague, that are not understaffed, where someone tells you, hey, here's what I want you to do. Here's the timeline that I need you to do it. Here's what your deliverable is. Here is who you should submit it to. There are some jobs where people are like really organized and structured. But if you are in an unstructured job, you need to create that structure yourself. How do you do that? Ask questions. So what I recommend to people who have ADHD, and not just people who have ADHD, this is also for people who are just in unstructured jobs, is become clear, right? So sit down with whoever is giving you the job and sit down with like a piece of paper or like a notebook or something. I recommend that people carry around a physical notebook. And you can kind of ask them, okay, so what's the goal? What's the big picture? What's the deliverable? What's the timeline? And write down what they say. So help me understand okay, so I understand now, and then also reflect back. This is important, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna say to your boss, hey, it sounds like this is a really important thing for us to do. So help me understand the big picture. Okay, what is the deliverable? What do you actually want from me? Like, what is the thing that I'm supposed to give you? And this is where like you'll have some jobs, right? So like real estate is another good example where you get a lot of people with ADHD. Find clients, make sales. How do you do that? I have no idea, right? So ask people, and then what's the timeline? And then once you jot all these things down, then reflect it back to the person and say, okay, so what we're trying to do is increase our revenue for this quarter. What you'd really like me to focus on is trying to schedule meetings from this contact list. And you'd like me to schedule 5 meetings within the next week. Gotcha. And so now you have it on paper. You've let them do some of the operationalizing for you, right? Because it may be hard for you to do on your own. And by the way, even when we look at things like psychotherapy protocols for ADHD, some of the protocols that are very effective, this is actually what the psychotherapy is. It's not like tell me about your feelings and your trauma. That can be helpful too and absolutely has a place. But sometimes what I've actually found is that some of the treatment protocols that are the most effective teach people how to organize. Okay? And this stuff, by the way, is part of the reason we built the guide to ADHD and doing stuff, because we'll teach like organization and productivity, okay? So this addresses executive dysfunction. This also is not going to be quite as simple as what I say because it requires some amount of effort and skills building, but can absolutely be done. Number 2, let's talk about attention. So we've already sort of addressed this, but let's understand something else. So this person says that they're forgetful, right? So I think there's somewhere in here where I think they have to ask questions again, or they feel forgetful. This is really common with people who have ADHD. So let's understand what forgetfulness is. People with ADHD aren't forgetful. They don't attend to the information. So let's understand this. Information goes into the brain, and then information comes out. This is memory, recall. The problem isn't that you can't do this step with ADHD. That's not what the problem with ADHD is. This is what it means to forget, is it went in at one point. The problem with ADHD is it never entered in the first place. So and you may have experienced this, that as you talk to someone, you'll ask, the best example of this is learning people's names, right? Where you can talk to someone, you can say, hey, my name is Alok. And they introduce themselves and you weren't even paying attention. Now you don't know their name. Right? And in that situation, you can say, hey, can you just remind me of your name real quick? Like you can wait 1 or 2 sentences in and like you continue the conversation. Then people like, how do I ever ask them their name? Because they just told, hey, can you remind me of your name? That's it. This happens to everybody. Okay? So the problem isn't that you forget. It's that it never entered in the first place. You never actually absorbed it in the first place. So what can you do about that? Come back to write things down. Right? So what I recommend is you carry around a notebook. And when people talk, you write things down. So this is what's really interesting. If you take a group of students and you put them in a class, if half of them are taking notes and the other half are not taking notes, the people who are not taking notes actually retain better than the people who are taking notes. Okay? So if you're fully paying attention to what someone is saying, you will actually increase your retention and absorption. That's for the neurotypical brain. For the ADHD brain, the benefit of not paying attention to what they are fully saying, to have a record of what they say because you're mindlessly writing it down, is a good trade for you to make. And why is it a good trade for you to make? Why do people think that people at jobs with ADHD are incompetent? Because people with ADHD ask the same question 10 times. This is why people think you are incapable. This is what makes people look incompetent. Because you weren't paying attention. That's not your fault. Your brain is a little bit different. So if you want to appear competent at work, I want to give you all just 2 simple scenarios, okay? One is we're going to walk into the office. I'm sitting down at a meeting and my boss gives me a task. I'm not paying attention. I ask a question because I wasn't paying attention. Wait, what do you want me to do? Because I wasn't writing anything down. And then they're like, I want you to do this. I'm like, okay, wait, I don't even know how to do that. You get overwhelmed. You walk out. You're not really sure what to do. You're not sure how to get started. You panic for 2 days. And then you go into your boss's office and you're like, hey, like, what did you want me to do? And then people conclude you're not capable. Versus you sit down, you pull out a notebook. Boss says something, you write it down. You have things back. You reflect back. You don't even have to understand. You're like, okay, so what you want me to focus on is this, this, and this. By the way, what's the deliverable and what's the timeline? Imagine how those 2 things look in a job. On the one hand, you are organized, efficient, dedicated. On the other hand, you are clueless, slow, have to repeat things, forgetful, mentally checked out. So what we want you to do is write things down, because if your brain can't attend, what you should do is like externalize this. So this is also what we found with ADHD, is that people who use external tools to unload the burden on their brain are the ones who can be successful. This is why people with ADHD need to use things like calendars and reminders, because your brain, you can't trust your brain to remember because it wasn't processing in the first place. So you need an external system to do the organization for you, okay? Third thing, the impulsivity. So there's one piece of concrete advice I would give y'all if you have ADHD in the workplace. Don't have drive-by conversations. Now, this is a little bit different because nowadays with virtual work environments and stuff, this is like less common. But one of the biggest problems that I notice my clients with ADHD make is they'll have these drive-by conversations where you'll like walk by your boss's office because some random ass thought is in your head, and you'll have some random ass conversation. You're not even paying attention. So you have to go do another drive-by. Or you meet people in the hall and they say, hey, by the way, can you do this, this, and this, or this contract came in, can you take a look at it, or whatever? And you're not like prepared. It's not within your organizational system. It's this drive-by conversation. The person perceives that they have passed along information, but it's just like a colander is just dripping out of your head, drains out. So be a little bit careful about your drive-by tendencies, and as best as possible, stick to the organizational system. Okay? So what I tend to find is that when people have this problem with ADHD and they go to a job and their job people say, hey, like, you're not cut out for the field. No, you're not. It's not that you're not cut out for the field. You can do fine at the field. And a good example of this, by the way, is something like a sprint. So if you look at coders who work in sprints actually work really well for people with ADHD. Because what is a sprint? It's like, hey, over the next week, there's this very, very defined task that we are going to complete in the next 7 days. This is the only thing we're going to do. All this crap up here in the ADHD brain, we're going to ignore all of it. We're going to do this in 1 week. And next week, we're going to do this. And next week, we're going to do this. So part of the reason that I even think that people have developed sprints is because I suspect there's a high level of like undiagnosed ADHD within the coding world. Okay? And so the key thing to understand is it's not that you're not cut out for a job. You can actually do any job. You should just understand, okay, how is my brain different? And what are the different structural tools I can put in place that will help me succeed in this environment? And then, of course, there's all the standard stuff, which is actually really good, like going to see a therapist, because there are people who are trained in these techniques and tools and can teach you these skills. So here's another thing that's really interesting. If you go to psychotherapy for ADHD, the effect is the same as medication. So a lot of people will wonder, they'll be like, well, hold on a second. Like, if I have ADHD, do I need to have medication, right? Do I need to have a stimulant? And what some people will also say is like, wow, I started a stimulant, it was revolutionary. Or I started medication and my mind works normally, I can live a normal life. And so people are like, do I have to do medication? So here's the thing. The effect of stimulant medication, something like, methylphenidate or, something like Adderall, medication in general. So there's also bupropion and things like that, non-stimulant medication. The effect of medication is the same as the effect of cognitive behavioral therapy or other forms of psychotherapy for ADHD. The effect size is the same. So you don't even need to have medication to have the benefit of medication. Here's the cool thing. If you stop medication, the benefit that you gain disappears over the course of 6 months. If you stop therapy or if you complete a course of therapy, the benefit that you gain lasts for 2 years. Sometimes even longer in my clinical experience. So this is the thing. People don't realize that ADHD is not something that, you have to live with it your whole life, but you can actually learn scientifically validated skills that will make it as if you don't have the disease. The impact of the disease will not be there because you have the structure around it. You have the organization around it. You recognize, okay, why do I feel overwhelmed? It's because my brain can't take an abstract task like find a job. Where the hell do you get started? How do you find a job? Do you go walking down the street? Here it is. No. Right? And then if you've got ADHD, you're like, okay, I find a job. Like, what do? I need to make a resume. Well, how do you make a resume? How do you know if a resume is good enough? How do you know when you're done with a resume? Do you edit it more? How many samples do you look at before you get started? This is what happens in the mind of someone with ADHD. They get overwhelmed by the possibilities. So what we're going to do is instead of forcing your brain to try to function with all the structure, which, by the way, some of these dysfunctional work environments like exist because they're built for neurotypical people. And even for neurotypical people, they can be incredibly disorganized. And so in these work environments, you need to learn certain structures. And the one last thing, just to give you all an example of this, is that habit circuitry is completely different from attentional circuitry. So if at some point you may wonder, okay, so for the psychotherapy, how can it last for 2 years? It's because once you build a habit with ADHD, it's a completely different circuit of the brain. So you don't have to pay attention. You don't have to, sort through it. You don't have to feel overwhelmed because then you're on autopilot. Like someone with ADHD can brush their teeth fine. Now, will they lose their toothbrush because they're not paying attention? 100%. Until they create a system where every day I'm going to put my toothbrush in the same place, every day I'm going to put my phone in the same place, every day I'm going to put my glasses in the same place. Once you create that system and it crosses over into habit, then you're golden. You're good. So if you're someone who's struggled because someone has said, oh, you can't succeed in this profession because of ADHD, it's not the profession. It's the structure of the work environment. And that may be normal for the structure of the work environment, but if you understand how your brain is different, you can literally create systems around you that will compensate for however your brain is different, and you can succeed. And like I've seen it tons and tons and tons of times. So a couple of other follow-up things to consider. One is absolutely consider getting a mental health evaluation or treatment if you think you may have ADHD. And the second is if y'all want information on some of those like tools and things like that, check out the guide to ADHD and doing stuff. The reason we call it that is because it's like, it's the guide to doing stuff. We're going to teach you how to do stuff. There's like all this kind of stuff that can help even people who are neurotypical. And if it can sort of help someone who has ADHD come from kind of like a sub-functional place, like suboptimal place to like normal, right? Which is why we do things like psychotherapy. Those same organizational techniques, those same motivational techniques, those same operationalization techniques can take someone who's at a normal level of function and then move them above normal to be like super normal. So hopefully that helps. Questions? Can you develop ADHD as a teenager or adult or as a result of trauma? Sort of. So chances are it's rare, but there is some data that like maybe between 2 and 5% of people will not have ADHD as a child and will develop it as an adult or be diagnosed with it as an adult. But very rare. Would CBT remove the positive aspects of ADHD, like hyperfocus? In my experience, I don't think I've ever seen that. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not like an ADHD specialist. It's not like 95% of my clients or patients have ADHD. But once again, if we look at things like, sprints. So I've never seen a situation in which like people do CBT and then now they can't function in the sprint, which by the way, the sprint is really fascinating because I suspect it's an environment that is conducive to evoking the hyperfocus in ADHD. It's really cool. Like it's really interesting to see how sprints were developed. Have you met anyone where medication works much better than therapy? Sure. I've met a lot of people for whom medication is the appropriate treatment. And the key things that I think about when medication is the superior treatment is especially when people don't have the time, energy, or willingness to do therapy. That's the beauty of medication, is it's like a pill. That's your commitment. You have to take a pill every day. Right? So I've worked with some people who are like, like surgeons, and they don't have the time, or they're not willing to make the time to go to therapy for 1 hour a week. So medication's good, right? That's why it's like really important to talk to like your doctor or professional about what your goals of treatment are, what your life is like. And that's why it's like really important to like have a customized solution for you, right? So go and talk to a doctor about, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's my goals. Here's my constraints. Here's my budget. Here's my time. Here's where I live. Here's what the commute would be like. Help me figure out a plan that would work for me. Can you muscle through it if you can't afford therapy? I mean, a lot of people do, but I don't think that the outcomes are as good. Yeah. So if someone has ADHD tendencies but are able to function normally, do they have the ADHD? That's precisely why we recommend you go see a professional, right? So it's a professional's job to figure out whether you truly have a diagnosable disorder or you're just somewhere like on the subclinical spectrum where your like attention span is shorter than average, right? That's what we do as professionals. We go through a set of diagnostic criteria and we do a thorough evaluation. So this is a good question. How do you know you need to go to therapy? The druggie asks. So the tricky thing about knowing whether you need to go to therapy is that the best person to know whether you need to go to therapy is a therapist, right? Because they're the ones that know whether you need it or not. So I want y'all to change your threshold. Do I need to go to therapy? That's not the question. The question is, would I benefit from an evaluation? That's the threshold to go. Everyone's always asking, do I need to go to therapy? You don't need to go to therapy. I mean, maybe you do, who knows? But you can't know that. The question is, would you benefit from an evaluation? And if the answer to that question is yes, you shouldn't schedule an appointment. Second question you can ask is, would I benefit from someone's help? And if the answer to that question is yes, schedule an appointment. I think we need to change. Remember that therapists are not there just for treatment. Doctors, therapists, we have two major things that we provide: diagnosis and treatment. So the threshold to go is, would I benefit from a diagnostic evaluation? Very, very, very misunderstood. Right? So some of the best medical care I have ever delivered is when people come into my office and I tell them, you know what, there's nothing wrong with you. You're actually golden. You're good. This is not a diagnosable illness. Right? I don't think that there's actually a problem. And I don't think you need treatment. You can come back if you're still suffering in some way. And then I'll also tell them things like this. I'll say, like, if A, B, C, or D happens or continues, then you should come back and we should reevaluate, right? That's incredibly important. Someone will come in, hey, like, I'm worried I could be depressed. My spouse passed away. We do a diagnostic evaluation. This seems to me like a normal course of grief. But if you have this, or this, if you start thinking about killing yourself, if you're still feeling this way in like 6 weeks or 2 months and it's not getting better, then you should come back. Very, very important role of therapists and clinicians. Okay? Yeah, so Tefalapin is saying, I keep calling around for ADHD evals, but either they say they don't do it or they don't answer. I'm tired of this. That's unfortunately a real tragedy, which is that does happen. Like, it sucks. I'm sorry, dude. That's a really good question. I think we're gonna have to hop into our interview, but Fearful Sludge Boy is saying, what are things that neurotypical people can do to help their ADHD loved ones? Can we help them? Absolutely. So we actually have a couple of lectures on precisely that. One is on parenting kids with ADHD, which I think also applies to loved ones as well. But like, there's a lot of stuff about that's in the guide. And that's why we built it, right? Because that's a very good question. Okay, let's hop into our interview, because we're a little bit late, but let's go. Nope. Hello. Hey, what's up? Give me just... Yeah, everything works great. Can you count to 10 for me? Oh. Hold on. So it looks... No, I think it's a problem on my end, where for some reason... Okay, count to 10 for me now.
1, 2,
Perfect.
3, 4.
We're good to go. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so I made a little list, but it's overall just it's like isolation.
Okay.
It's body dysmorphia or body dysmorphic disorder, which is self-diagnosed. Well, it's not self-diagnosed, but it's like I didn't actually get diagnosed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it impairs my function, therefore. Then it's like basically making up lies to myself and others that spice up my life, which is, I don't know if it counts as daydreaming or like, not exactly sure, but that's another topic. Attachment issues maybe, and then, but overall it's like just isolation and what it led to, and because that's, I think, the main one. It's like it's at the bottom of the tree of issues, let's say, at least in my...
Okay, so you said so isolation is kind of the main thing?
Yes.
Okay. So, and what do you go by?
Tavian. I can go by Tavian.
Okay. So, Davian, can you just tell us a little bit about, what kind of keeps you isolated?
Yeah, so, I mean, mainly it's about dysmorphia. I don't know if I like should I just give a like brief recap of my life, let's say,
Sure, if you want to.
or
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like since I was like a kid, I never really went out except when I was like doing some activity,
Okay.
which was like I had to do, right? So school or like something that I just had to do for whatever reason. Um, then in the past, like since 2019, I basically just skipped like even my like superior studies, and I just basically sat inside and didn't really interact with people for like most of the time, like all 99% of the time. I can count on my hands when I really just like felt comfortable going out.
Okay.
And yeah, yeah, the root of this is mostly about dysmorphia, about like I have malocclusion, and that leads to my jaw being like backwards. I have like class 3, but usually I just jut it forward. I don't know if that's the word, but I like keep it a bit forward so like it looks normal. And whenever like I have to eat outside or I have to like make like most facial expressions, right? Or like, you know, certain scenarios. For example, now I'm not exactly uncomfortable. I just panic. I just can't really like I feel really bad. I feel really anxious, and I just can't like I hate being outside and having people see me. So yeah.
Okay. So you keep on using this term body dysmorphia. Is that something that you've ever talked to anyone about?
So yes. So I didn't talk about this until like a few months ago, to anyone. I found like a group of friends, recently, obviously online, and I kind of opened to them, but I didn't really open fully because, again, like reconnecting to the thing that I basically do stuff to spice up my life or make it less, like, more interesting, or like I say, half truths and stuff. I don't know exactly where it comes from. I just assume it's my brain being like in self-defense or just like living a life instead of just being bored in what I have. So it's like a mechanism to protect myself. But yeah, I just I talked to them about this and it felt better. I felt like I was starting, like for example, I was exercising for like months. I was getting in shape, so like whatever. And I had this period after I met these people that I started feeling a bit better. I went out once with like a bunch of people, and that didn't go well, but mostly not really like it's just those people where they randomly messaged me and they were like, "Oh, remember us from middle school? Let's just hang out." It was like random, but it ended up badly because like I ended up like drunk driving and doing like some stupid stuff. And yeah, I mean, I nothing tragic happened, but it was like the wrong kind of people.
Sure.
So like, yeah, and yeah, but that's the group of people that kind of know about that, and it's like 6 people or 5.
So, David, have you ever thought about seeing a professional?
Avian, Avian with like T.
Oh, Tavian.
I mean, it's whatever, but yeah. So I did like okay, a couple years ago, I attempted to check out of life, let's say. It wasn't really, it was really like a clumsy attempt. It was kind of like whatever, but I wouldn't have done it. It was just like I didn't actually not want to, like I didn't actually want to die. I just wanted to live a better life, sort of. So I didn't do it. I ended up in psychiatry, which is here is like I don't know. My experience is pretty bad with it. Uh, they just listened to me talk about stuff, and they were like, "Oh, you need like therapy, but we can't really do it here, and it's like expensive, and like you have to go to whatever." And I was, at the moment, I don't have money, and they gave me like lithium and Depakin, which I don't remember what's the actual like name of the,
Mm-hmm.
but like it was like for depression, and I got diagnosed with depression, and that lasted for like 3 months. Didn't really like. I felt a bit better, but I feel like it was like the circumstances. It wasn't really the actual like. experience with medicine or anything. If anything, it just made me go a bit fast. So, um, yeah, that's it. And then I just left. Even I just was, yeah, it's all fine. It wasn't really fine, but I just left, and they were like, okay, you seem better. Because I was a bit better, but it wasn't actually fine. Like I relapsed after, in my like I was very I had like a really big existential crisis before that, so that's why I tried to like, check out. And after that, after it happened, I kind of got better. And I slowly got better as I was in therapy, but it wasn't not in therapy, but like on meds and like talking to them. But it wasn't really because of that. It was just because of like the situation that like I felt like more free and like I feel like I just vented with that.
Hmm.
So like I started feeling better, but then I relapsed again. I don't think that
S-
uh,
So you mentioned that you'll sometimes say things to spice up your life. What do you mean by that?
yeah. So like I mean I either like make up like in my head I play like random stories about like situation that I would like to happen, or like rarely I kind of like make them up completely, but sometimes I just like something happens and I like instead of just saying how it happened, because maybe I find it boring or like it was boring, whatever, I just go, oh yeah, and then add some spice to it, some like fake stuff that actually didn't happen, or like to make it cooler, or like I feel like I have this cool persona online, and there is like right now it's a bit weird to talk about this for me because you might see me a bit anxious because there is like a bunch of people that are watching probably that know me for a different kind of person, or like that I am. It's like a kind of a persona. And yeah, I have this like kind of cooler image online, or like not the way I am. I don't know if cooler, but yeah,
Can you
it's not.
can you tell us about the person that you are online?
No, well, it's not really. I just like I'm just like more social and like more out there, and like I don't know. I'm just I think I have I have surprisingly decent social skills for my situation. Therefore, I can just fake being like a cool person, or like I don't actually like if people think I go outside and all that. It's like so yeah. But I'm very like isolated. It's like I just don't do anything basically.
Okay. How do you know that you really aren't a cool person?
Oh no, okay, so that's the thing. I actually started lately, but like it's always like my life about self-improvement was always like there was always self-improvement like internally. And I feel like I've reached a point where I really like who I am as a person, like my values and whatnot. But I wish I could fix the external stuff about me. So what like my achievements, my what I actually like, for example, I want to go somewhere but I don't go because of this thing and so on. But like I like myself. It's just like whenever I go out, I don't really worry too much about what I would say, or like what I just worry about how people perceive my appearance. Like it used to be worse. I used to actually be more self-conscious about other things, but I feel like I've come a long way from that. I can know for sure. So like, right? But I feel like body dysmorphia is like my main problem right now in like
Hmm.
isolation and whatnot.
Okay.
And the fact that like I have like this weird like with online people is whatever, but if I like I have two people that I kind of know in person right now, and I don't really interact too much with them, but they don't like I didn't make up stuff for them. They just don't know much about me. So
What makes it hard for you to leave the house?
well, I don't like I actually leave. Sometimes I go like sometimes like recently way more often. I just go for like walks and like enjoy the sun and whatnot, and like I feel like that keeps me in check mentally. I don't I don't fall into this despair hole.
Hmm.
And yeah, I kind of go outside. It's just I don't interact with people in a friendly or like way that I want to. It's just
What's that
like
like for you to not interact with people?
it feels like since it's been basically all my life, like I've had, mm, okay, I will say how it is right now. So it's lonely, but I kind of learned to cope with it by having like a lot of people online that I talk to. So like I am kind of like online extroverted, if that makes any damn sense.
I think it's brilliantly
So
said.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. Just feels bad, but I have people online, but it's like I experienced enough things that I'm missing, like a, a bit of all, like woman and so on. But I never experienced enough to actually enjoy it properly, but I experienced enough of it to miss it a lot.
Wow.
So yeah,
And does something come to mind in terms of something that you miss?
well, my ex, um,
Your what?
and my ex, my
Okay.
ex-girlfriend. Um, and well, the people that I could have been friends, well, I was kind of friends with in high school. I feel like it's been like a slippery slope all my life. Like I was way more social when I was a kid, and it just went like this, like very, very, yeah.
And
Um, yeah. So basically, back to the friends that I could have made in like high school. I had like a bunch of people that I was like kind of friendly with. I always was like in okay terms with like everyone, but I never was going out or doing anything. And I had like two or three people that I was close to, but I feel like they were kind of introverted too. So we never really pulled the trigger on doing more than just like get like talking in school. So that never really went anywhere. So that I miss a lot. And I wish I could have changed it. Yeah,
so it sounds like you like the person that you are.
kind of. I mean, I have my flaws, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with myself nowadays. I'm
Can you
cool with myself.
can you tell us about you?
About me. Okay. Well, I'm a very curious person. I jump from like interest to interest. I just like read a lot about a lot of stuff. I'm not necessarily very knowledgeable in any topic in particular, except like maybe computer stuff, some psychology, I guess, maybe, and art, I guess. And yeah, but I feel like I know a lot of stuff, and like I'm a good conversation for people. I think I'm fundamentally maybe too self-sacrificing. I'm a good person, but I'm too self-sacrificing, so that
Hmm.
I'm trying to change.
What do you mean about that? By that?
I really care about others. I feel like it's because I know what it means to be in pain, so I don't like seeing others in pain. It makes me feel really bad, so I like to help. I usually have like these talks that I try to keep very, very like not formal, not therapy, because I'm fucking like I don't know anything, right? But I try to like give support and like vent space for my friends if they like, or like even random people sometimes. They just they are having like a bad day. I'm gonna like just hop on call with them and be like, if if they feel like it, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm getting a bit emotional, but
Hmm.
nothing.
I'm sorry.
I just no, I was like I was getting a bit emotional, but I don't know if you can tell, but yeah.
What were you experiencing?
Just no, I was just like kind of tearing up a bit. Just, I guess I was thinking about like, I mean, I'm just in general like a very emotional person. I get, yeah, I don't really cry easy. I don't know what's the word for it, but yeah.
Do you know what emotion you're feeling?
Uh, It's like sadness for my situation and the fact that I said I understand what pain means, I think. mixed with being happy that I can give a helping hand to my friends. So it's like I recently cried for like in the recent months, I discovered like the piano, which is like just an instrument, right? But I cried of happiness for like one of the first times. Yeah, just just clicked for me. So that was like I think this was also like a bit of happiness, I guess. I never really experienced it, but yeah.
And I'm noticing that as you're recalling discovering the piano, I can see you're getting emotional now too.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so when you said that you have like friends online, and it sounds like you're a good friend to have.
Well, some would say, some would not say. I mean,
Sure.
I'm kind of kidding, but like not everyone likes you. I feel like I'm a polarizing figure because I'm very out there, and sometimes I just say I'm just very. I don't know if I would call myself eccentric, but I've been called that like a few times by some people. So I'm just very, I don't know. But I think I'm a good friend to have, yeah. If you get to know me deeply, I really like to have deep connection with people.
So I think it's Tavian. Is that right?
Yes.
So Tavian, I think a lot of people are experiencing something similar to what you're kind of experiencing, which is that for some reason or another, they're um, it's difficult for them to form relationships in real life. They had opportunities for friendships which they sort of didn't take advantage of. And I loved what you said earlier that you've had just enough of like normal friendships and stuff to where you can like miss it now.
Yeah.
That was brilliant, by the way. So and you also mentioned that you do have these like online relationships. Can you help me understand or help us understand like how does that happen? Like what do you think is going on with sort of like okay, the real world is hard to engage in, and then what do you kind of get or why do you engage with these relationships online?
Well, I just get like I just like people. I just like talking to people. I like being. I think I'm not sure. I think I'm sort of extroverted as a person. I just really enjoy talking and like messing around and whatnot. I would do that in person, but again, the reason I don't do it in person is because I feel awkward. Sometimes I always feel like I don't deserve to behave in a certain way because I look in a certain way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is weird because I want to point to one thing. I've been told once that like that means I'm very shallow and that whatnot. I don't really judge other people for their looks. I definitely notice it because I am very self-scrutinizing. Therefore, I automatically kind of project that on other people, but I don't really judge them for that. I just want to
So
make that because I feel like a lot of people I've seen that a lot of people think body dysmorphic people are very shallow, which we really aren't. It's just we think we are hideous. So yeah,
so when I ask you who you are, you
yes.
say you share a lot of like really wonderful things.
Thank you.
And what makes it hard for you to believe that you are that person when you interact with other people?
Well, I do believe that. It's just I don't think it's like I wish. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to touch on. I don't know if it's I don't feel like I'm enough because I am not that perfectionist as a person, but like in this case, yeah. For example, I will give you one little example and we can like maybe go from there. I I played the league a lot, very lot, very much lot. Sorry for the England, but when I say league, I just go mental. Um, I didn't play in like 1 year or something, and I never was really like I was a gamer, but it was just a coping mechanism. I never really liked games and too much, and like I basically went through hundreds of accounts. Like I wanted to get challenger, but every time I hit it like master or like whatever, I would just be, oh, this win rate is not enough. I wish it was like higher. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if I'm like just one of the challengers. I just wish I was, you know. So I don't know how much that applies to the rest of my life. I
Well, what do you think is going on there? So you made lots of accounts and you would
well,
climb to master and then you'd make another account?
yes, I would be like, oh, this win rate is not good enough. Now have to like after this, like it's only downhill, and I'm not gonna get like the 70 win rate that I want to like, be impressive and whatnot. And I'm just make another account, be, oh, next is better. I'm gonna get 70 win rate now, which I mean, I did this since I was like silver, since I started the game basically, right? I just perma went through accounts, and it was never like a good account, you know.
Hmm?
And I feel like maybe I'm doing to some extent that with friendships. I'm just like, oh, I'm not good enough, or like I said some dumb shit and like, or I lied about this, so I just eject from that friendship or like that relationship with the person, and I just try new people, and I try new people. I didn't really do that much in person because I didn't really have the opportunity with many people, but I've done that online.
How does it feel saying that?
I've thought about it kind of, not too much about this in particular, but it feels I don't know. It feels weird because I don't think I'm that perfectionist, but at the same time I have patterns that indicate that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I can understand why you don't think you're that perfectionist. I mean, I'm not actually hearing a whole lot of perfectionism either. So it's not,
Okay.
I'm hearing
Wow,
something
thank
else.
you.
Huh?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, nothing.
I'm not hearing a whole lot of perfectionism.
Okay, yeah.
What did you think? Did
No,
you,
no, no. I was memeing because I
okay.
thought you were like, oh yeah, you don't speak perfectly. Like I'm
Oh,
just, I'm
no.
just, I'm just, I'm just messing with you. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, if you did hit that 70 win rate, what would that mean to you?
I guess standing out, not being just being. I wanted to be like even in my gameplay, I always been a very flashy player. In everything that I did, I was always the kind of, I don't know if that's just who I am or it's like something that I want to be because of my life. Probably it's a mix of both. But I always been like the kind of trick shot player, the kind of like different one that does stuff differently. And it's like, so I don't know, maybe just to stand out, I guess.
And if you did stand out, then what would happen then?
I would just be, oh yeah, I'm cool now, I guess.
What does that mean?
I I don't know. I'm just maybe better than others, or like I don't know. I don't like to see it this way because I don't think I care that much about being better than others, but like maybe I do. I don't know.
I, I'm not hearing
Perhaps.
a whole lot of you care about. What do you care about, Tavian?
What do I care about? Yeah, that's what do I care about in what way? Because I could go on a
So
I could I could go on an existential discussion here. I
sure.
don't be more precise. No, don't go there. I just what do I care about?
What are you looking for
Like
with the 70% win rate?
with the 70%. Just I don't know, just I guess standing out. I'm not exactly sure.
And
Just,
what?
like if you're 55 or something, you're just like one of the challenges, right? If you're 70, you're like impressive. You're like, you know. So I guess being impressive, I suppose.
And I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. Um, what would it mean to you if you did get the 70% win rate? What would that mean for you, for your life?
In League, well, not much to be fair, but
Mm-hmm.
um, y- it would mean like momentary pleasure probably. But then I'd be like, oh, on to the next challenge. I assume it's like some hedonistic stuff. I assume it's just it made no sense. Like that's why I stopped League and I just started trying to fix my life basically in
Sure.
during COVID. Yeah.
So, Tavian, do you think that some of the experiences that you're sharing with us today like resonate with people that could be listening?
I think to some extent, yes.
What do you think are
Uh,
the parts that resonate with people?
Maybe so, like obviously isolation,
Mm-hmm.
making friends. I don't know about like the beings, because like being socially okay, but actually not going out. I don't think body dysmorphia resonates too much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to some extent, but I didn't really find much content about it online or on this channel. Like there was one or two interviews, but it's
Yeah.
not
So
really.
I think when we when we reached out to you, we were I think a lot of what anyway, just keep going and then I'll sort of share some thoughts. But
Yeah, and but maybe the lying part, because I can't really know how much people
mm-hmm. You're
just
right.
make up in their life, right? I just can't know. Like I feel like the people that are watching now that know me are like, what the fuck is this guy on? Like, sorry if I say, can I say the F word more?
Sure.
Like, I'm just, yeah, okay. So yeah, maybe that part, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So
I guess this perfection is more like this not being enough in some sense.
Yeah. So I think so. Let me just share a little bit about what I'm hearing. So I think a lot of what you're saying is really interesting. I'm really grateful to you for sharing your experience. I think the stuff around the body dysmorphia I think is really more appropriate to explore with someone, like you should really consider seeing a therapist and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that the things that I think really that a lot of people I think can resonate with. I mean I resonate with a lot of what you're saying. So I think this sort of idea of okay, like there were opportunities that I had that I didn't take advantage of. I've become more isolated as time goes by. I've started to replace what I get from the outside world with the virtual world, right? That like
Yes.
so you're kind of scratching some of your as you said you're kind of like this online extrovert. And you're very
Yeah.
talkative, you're very insightful. It's fun to talk to you. Like it's
Thank you.
interesting. So I think a lot of people can resonate with a lot of that. And then I think we toss around this word perfectionism. I don't think it's perfectionism because I'm not hearing that you're beating yourself up for doing a particular thing. So we'll talk about that maybe in a second. But so I'm kind of curious, like, what do you think you're looking, or so I'm sort of smelling or sensing a similarity between you telling small lies and shooting for the 70% win rate. Does that
Hmm.
make sense to you at all?
Not really. Maybe I could. Let me. No, not really.
Okay. So, and maybe not. So maybe I'll
You
just
mean
share.
like, wait. You mean like you think I'm coping that I can't get 70 win rate, but it's like that's like a lie to myself, or
No, no,
that's what
no.
you mean?
No,
Or
no.
I really don't.
I'll explain in
Then
a
I have
second.
no idea. Then I have no
But I'm
idea.
kind of curious. So if there are like people out there that have become increasingly isolated and increasingly kind of like it's hard for them to go out, do you have any thoughts about how they should approach their situation?
Well, it depends. Like if so, I have like basically body dysmorphia, which is the main thing, and the rest I kind of fixed. Well, not I can't be sure that I fixed it, but I feel like it's just manageable. Like even if I go out, I'm just like, fuck it, we ball. Basically, I'm just gonna deal with the pain and see where it goes because, and if anything, I will. If I suck at this interaction, which I did a lot of times, and I'm like, that's how I learned. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna like learn how to behave a bit better next time, and next time a bit better, and just tank the pain. So I don't know what's the pain threshold for these people though. Mine was like a, yeah.
So how so let's say that someone is like has not reached where you've gone, right? So you're saying that body dysmorphia is like it seems like the central problem, but how did you get to a point where you are social, you are a good conversationalist, you started taking care of yourself physically? How did you get there?
Well, I basically I just self-help, I guess, and I followed it instead of just like binging. I was like, okay, I need to exercise and do this, and I just did it. Like I struggled a bit to, but I just kept doing it. I kept doing it until it actually clicked. Because I worked out for like, for example, I worked out like I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I dropped, then I tried again, and then I tried. Like third was the charm, apparently. So yeah, I just kept doing it. I with people I feel like I've been like as a child I was extremely extroverted. I had my what's it called, my teacher in middle school. Just I was perma when she was like teaching, right? I would just go to kids or like whisper jokes and they would just laugh and make the class like absolutely a mess. And she just took another, what's it called, the thing you sit, I don't remember. The word escapes me.
Okay.
The table. She cut the table in two, and she just put it near her desk, and I would just sit there for like 2 years because I would distract the class.
Okay.
That was funny. That was funny. Fun period of my life, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I thought you
yeah.
said you didn't go out much as a kid.
So I didn't. It was all in class. It was like when I had to go to school, right?
And what's your
As
understanding of why you didn't go out much as a kid?
I felt excluded. So like okay, now it's time for the life story, I think, briefly. So you get some insight into that. Um, I moved here well, I'm in Italy, whatever, I dox myself. Uh, I moved from Romania when I was around 5, and there were really cool kids and there were really bad kids. And some kids called me gypsy and whatnot, and I started just like running around with chairs trying to smash their heads. I'm sorry if that's I didn't it was it I'm exaggerating a bit, but like I actually like ran around
Mm-hmm.
with chairs and like getting mad at them. So I don't know if that kind of traumatized me in some way, but like I always felt kind of excluded as a kid from like stuff. I don't think I was. I went to like some parties in like elementary and whatnot, but it was mostly just like everyone got invited, right? And slowly I just started not going anywhere anymore. Like it was very linear. Like
Okay. So you stopped getting invitations because of the way that you were
um
reacting.
I did know. So I got invitations, I just denied them. I just didn't really feel like I belonged, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
So I to some extent I feel like I didn't belong. Like for example, I played football and I think 6 to 13 until my grades started. Oh, I was really bad in school by the way. Like extremely bad. The first, like I was really good in elementary. Then in middle school, I didn't study at all. In high school, I didn't study at all, but I managed to just like get really good grades at the end of the year. So I would make up for the bad ones and just keep passing classes. But yeah, kept getting invitations when I was like a kid, but they gradually started fading off. And also like I went to a really like middle school was like I think my chance to actually do something because the class was made of sort of nice people, and we were like possibly united and whatnot. But I had like my first very bad heartbreak then, and I think that also fueled uh, my withdrawal from society into the woods, and yeah, um, yeah, and then
What's funny
high
about that?
school. And it's an inside joke with someone right now, so it's like the
Okay.
woods thing doesn't. But yeah, in high school also, like I was in like a professional school, which is like really bad here. It's like people are basically either junkies or very bad kids.
Hmm.
So it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't really nice. Or like it wasn't empathic people. It wasn't like nice people to be around. It was
Sure.
just like annoying pricks, basically. So yeah,
And you
that didn't.
mentioned that you said heartbreak, and then earlier you said that you had been in a relationship. Was that you talking about the same thing, or was that different?
No, so no, that was like my first crush in middle school, and she basically rejected me, going, "You gypsy, get away from me." and it was weird because I didn't actually like I didn't take it that bad because she had like this phase that she grew into and she was like some sort of pseudo-fascist. I mean, Italy, so I think you get the yeah. So this girl was like my chair mate, like my table mate, because like it was couples for like the year prior to the rejection, and we were like, I mean, she saw me as a friend probably, I don't fucking know. But when I asked her out the next year, because she got like cuter or something, I remember she just like went full ballistic on me, and I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, that was weird.
But it sounds like you had a girlfriend.
Yeah, so in 2014, so like the first year of high school, I met a girl like on a random drawing group on like Facebook, and she was like far away from me. She was really like 500 kilometers, and we just randomly clicked. We started talking. We were like drawing together, and we just, we just kept interacting. And after a while, it was like, oh, I like you. Oh, I like you too. And we just like kept talking. We were like distant. Couple years later, or like 1 year and a half, I don't remember exactly, I broke up with her. I was like, okay, this situation is getting pretty bad. Like it's stalled. We can't really see each other, whatnot. It's like unfortunate. And we broke up. She felt really bad. 1 year after that, still in high school, I messaged her because I missed her. And she was with someone, but she still liked me clearly, and we kept talking and whatnot. We ended up together again, like whatever. And at the end, we met in like 2017, and yeah, that went surprisingly great. She was extremely like shy and timid, absolutely gorgeous girl, great human being. I wish her the best. Um, and yeah, that was a great day, absolutely great day. But then we couldn't really see each other.
Hmm.
Money problems, very far away, whatnot. She really liked me, I really liked her, blah blah blah. And the only saving grace was basically me studying, God forbid. And I didn't do that, and I didn't really get to go to a uni that was like near here, because like she had to go to like she was into arts and she had to go to an art school, and basically she had to go to the north where she lives. So the only way we could see each other was either having a lot of money, which we didn't do, didn't have, or me going to the north by getting some sort of like, I don't, the word escapes me, but funding,
Yeah,
because I was like a
scholarship.
good student, scholarship, yeah. But me, a good student, nice one. Yeah, so I didn't do that, and yeah, it started fading away, and we eventually just were like, okay, this is not going anywhere. We met, and I just had her cry in my arms for like 2 hours just because we broke up, and that was really bad. It wasn't like I thought I grew kind of bored of it. I feel like it was like the first time that I broke up with her, because this time she actually broke up with me, but she didn't want to. And I feel like it was the first time. I was like okay at first. I was like I feel like I grew bored of it because whatever, nothing was happening. But then like it hit me really hard, and that was like a really bad experience for my life for sure. And that was in the last year of high school, basically.
So,
That's
Tavian,
murk.
yeah,
That's murk.
what are you reading in the
I don't know.
smoke?
I don't know. You're like, okay, this guy talks a shit ton. Maybe I don't know. Or like he
I
has a lot to say.
yeah, I think you have a lot to say,
I do.
right? And I think that there's a big difference between this guy just talks a shit ton and this person has a lot to say.
Sure.
You strike me
I
as someone who's very genuine, and what
thank
I'm
you.
what I'm sort of I don't know why this feeling doesn't dominate me, but what I feel more than anything else is it's an absolute tragedy that you're stuck at home.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like it's like if anything describes me really well, And this my ex told, like, I'm grateful to her because she saw such a good person in me that I didn't really have an identity in my head back then. I was like, I'm just this person that is living, right? But she saw a lot of good in me, and she kept telling me that I'm like smart, I'm a good person, I'm like a really decent human being, the best person she ever met. And I was like, what the fuck? But in the recent years, I realized like that she was actually right. So I'm grateful that she planted that seed in my head, I think. A lot of what I am today is because of her, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm noticing a mix of emotions now too.
Okay. Well, I'm melancholic and happy at the same time.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me just can I just think for a second and then maybe share some thoughts? So to start off with, I think, you've mentioned body dysmorphia a couple of times, and I think that's if that's really what's holding you back, I would strongly recommend.
By the way, it started right during that rejection. I don't think it was the rejection, but it's when I started being self-conscious about like women or like generally being like an attractive or interesting person and whatnot. Like in middle school, I was in that. It was in middle school that I had they cut the table into, and I was just like the crazy kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we can kind of get to that. But so, I mean,
Okay.
my first thought is that, like, you seem very genuine to me. I don't know
I
if you're
try.
doing, I don't know if you're doing that thing where you're telling like
No,
50% the truth.
no,
No,
zero.
it's okay if you are.
Still,
I'm
still
not.
no, no, no. I
I'm not.
You
I'm
can
not asked.
do one thing. Wait. Do one thing. Ask me at the end of the interview if I did it because I still don't know. Like if I stop doing it, I feel like the way I stop doing it is just getting a life, basically, making it interesting. That I find it interesting. So
Yeah,
that's
I don't think it's actually very important whether you're doing it right now. I was just saying I just don't know. But
no, no. I
what?
try not. I don't
Yeah.
want to because for the sake of the interview, the other people and my situation, obviously. So I
So
don't.
what I'm hoping to do is let's just try to talk a little bit about, if it's okay, I'll like share some concepts with you,
Okay.
and how can we kind of understand, maybe some of this stuff applies to you, maybe some of it doesn't, but there's a lot of stuff just in general about the mind and especially the ego
Okay.
that I think could be
Mm,
useful to you. Is that,
yeah.
how
Yes.
does that
Yes.
sound to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So let me just, I'm going to have to do some switching around of things. So I'm going to move you over here. I'm going to screen share with you.
I have no idea what you're doing because I don't have the stream open. If that's
No, yeah, you don't need to have the stream open.
okay. Yeah,
It's
sure.
unless you want to talk with chat. So can you see that?
No, hell no. I don't want to see chats.
Okay, good. Okay,
Good.
so let's
Love you, chat, but
talk
can't
for a
do that.
second, Tamien. Okay, so you say, so let's understand a little bit about how the mind works and like what's going on here. Okay,
Okay.
so,
Sorry if I go a bit dark, but I have to.
huh?
Sorry if I go a bit dark, but I have to full screen and it's just
Oh,
the
that's
light.
fine. I've
I will.
switched the streams so that they can see what you can see. And
Okay.
okay, so okay, here's Tavian. Oh, Tavian's yellow. We're gonna switch
Yes,
you over
I
to white.
prefer green, but you do you.
Oh, okay. No, we can do green.
I'm kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's Tavian. Okay, and
Okay.
Tavian's a kid, and Tavian is like such a cool kid. He's extroverted. He gets people in trouble. His teacher, you have to sit next to the teacher. Like, this is Tavian. He's like,
Yes.
he's joyous, and Tavian
Hell yeah.
overflows. Does that make sense? There's just so
Okay,
much
sure.
life in you, and it like spills out onto other people, and like in a good way, but also like a
Okay.
frustrating way for your teachers. And
Hell yeah.
I think what we even see in you today is the same quality of like bubbly joy,
Oh
overflowing,
yeah.
lot of
I'm
emotion. You feel things intensely, you kind of live intensely, and like you're moved by music and love, and like
hell
you've
yeah.
got the soul of a poet, bro.
Thank you. Thank you. I
You know?
wish, but Yeah.
And so I think we saw this person today, and I think this person's great. But then something kind of happened, right? Sometimes in life, what happens is we'll have some kind of like traumatic events. Um, and then so you mentioned things like body dysmorphia, but it can be something. Maybe
Yeah.
rejection is a really common one. And I'm
Yeah,
not sure. Yeah.
I'm not, I still don't know if anything in particular was like, I think it's just a pile of things, honestly. I don't have one thing that, except body dysmorphia.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get to that in a second. I think another thing that's actually very common is we have no idea if you have this or not, but I think one thing that we've seen a lot is kids who are class clowns oftentimes actually have ADHD. So
Mm.
like some things that I've noticed is that when you're the class clown and when you don't do well in school, like you made this joke and you're like, ha ha ha, I do well in study, lol, as if that's possible. People who are highly curious, people who have trouble with follow through, who will get excited about something and then like not follow through with it. Like sometimes that can even look like something like ADHD. So I'd say for these two reasons, like you should definitely consider getting evaluated. I know you've got financial constraints and stuff, but so since that's not really an option, like we're going to kind of steer clear of that. But I think we can still talk about things more generally. Okay. So once you have this, for whatever reason, something over here changes kind of like your being. And what happens is we've got one version of Tavian here who is like, thoughtful, funny. And then there's this other version of Tavian. So when you go out, Tavian, what do you think people think about you?
Um, well, okay. So when I go out and I don't eat and I don't move my face too much, I think they think, okay, this is a normal guy, maybe perhaps handsome. I have no idea, but you know, just
Okay.
okay. But
And if you
when I
do
talk,
use your face when you go out, what do people
I
think
think
then?
this guy is the weirdo. Also, the fact that I don't have a background, they can't background check me if that makes sense. It's like I don't have social media. I don't really have my like I can't really like for example, they tell me, "Have you been to this place or do you know this place?" And I literally live there. I'm like, um, no, like that. That's that kind of. I feel like people just go, huh, what?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So people just go, huh? So like you mentioned weirdo. Like what are some other words that you think people will think about you when you go out?
I don't know. I feel like they just can't really know who I am or like read me in any way, except like just the person that I'm being in the moment. That they just like either assume bad things or they're like, oh, this guy maybe is a freak, maybe not. I have no idea, like something like that.
Okay. Assume bad things, question freak or not. Okay. So what do you think about those thoughts?
Well, I think mm, they kind of make sense to some extent. Like I surely could approach better situations and like I feel like I will get when we get to attachment, I will tell you what I did recently, but um, yeah, I feel like I need to find a way in which I come across as like not very social, but in a normal way. Because I feel like I just try to hide stuff or either like lie about stuff. Sometimes people might catch the lie and they'll be like, what the fuck is this guy doing? It's like
Okay.
discrepancies and whatnot. Or they're just like, I can't really, like what's going on with this person? Like he
Okay.
doesn't have Insta, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. Like
All
what's up
right.
with you?
So what makes it hard for other people to see this person? Why
Well,
can't they
it's
just see that?
that person comes out when I get like in a deeper connection with someone. Or like I just when it's like normal interactions just to get to know people are very like small talkish and like just random and I don't really like that. I just, so I don't engage too well in that or like
I mean, it sounds
I,
like you're a
I,
good conversationalist.
perhaps, but it's like when it's in person, sometimes people talk about a lot of right, like mundane things that I'm not really, especially like for example in at my place, like oh I've been to this place and this guy did this and this, and I'm like I don't fucking know any of that. Like so I don't know exactly what to say about the stuff.
Okay. Okay. So let's just understand like a couple of basic things. So like this is the person that you are, right?
Okay, yes.
And so I'm gonna ask. Well, I was gonna ask leading questions, but I'll just kind of say it. So I think that when you lie about stuff, this is a way that you come across as something,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. That's why I try
And
not
if
to
you
like.
have a 70% win rate,
Mm.
you come across as something. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Yeah, so I just come across as cool. Yes.
Right? And you mentioned
Right.
that earlier too. So you don't believe you're cool, so it's very important for you to come across as cool because you're
Yeah.
assuming all this kind of stuff. So this is a very very common kind of like thing, like so we can sort of like understand almost from an eastern perspective. So what I would say is this is the real you. This is actually your ego. And when it
Mm.
comes to your ego, it's like the ego is like a mask or an identity that we wear, right? So ego is like attributes of ourself, like successful or
Mm.
man or
Yeah.
doctor or rich or handsome or ugly. Like who we really are is not, that's just a feature of us. So if, for example, I consider myself handsome and I'm in an accident and I have a scar across my face, even though I'm no longer handsome, I'm still me. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
So even if you are a success or a failure, you're still you. You're still the same person. Success or failure is an attribute of your identity, but that's like a different kind of thing. And this can be really confusing for people because what a lot of people think is that who they are is their ego. And this is also where I don't hear like perfectionistic language from you. What I hear is language about coming across a particular way. So when I talk
Yeah.
to people who are perfectionistic, they're usually like, if there's 100 questions on a test and I get 95, they still 95 of them right, they still beat themselves up because they didn't get 100.
Yeah.
What
They
I'm
care.
really
They do care about that. They don't care that other people tell them it's good.
exactly. And what
Yeah.
do you care about, Tavian?
Yeah. I guess I still care about what other people think about me. That's
Absolutely.
I just externalize uh my happiness. Yeah. Or
I,
like not happiness, but yeah.
well, I mean, so that's the interesting thing. Like, are you unhappy?
Um, I am. I mean, I'm very unhappy about my situation. Yes.
You're
Fundamentally,
unhappy.
as a person, I'm very happy. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm a child. Like, I don't know. I just get excited about a lot of stuff. So like it's like weird. Like my
Yeah,
situation makes me sad, but fundamentally, I think I'm more happy than other people.
I think you come across as happy. And
Thank you.
it's kind of
Yes.
weird, right? Because you're like, oh, I like can't leave the house and I have
Yeah,
body dysmorphia and
exactly.
all this kind of
That's
stuff.
that's why that persona works so well.
So this is what's kind of interesting is that like we think that those kinds of things determine happiness.
Yeah.
That since I don't have friends, so not having friends correlates with being sad and alone, sure. But this is what's really bizarre is if you look at things like Buddhist literature, for example, they'll say that you can experience negative emotion and be happy at the same time. That like
Yeah.
sadness and contentment can coexist, peace and sadness can coexist, and also like peace and joy or suffering and joy or suffering and accomplishment can also coexist. So this is another problem that we have that we think that peace and contentment are like linearly correlated with things like accomplishment and the achieving of desires. But what we're hearing from you is you have a lot of desires that are unfulfilled that make you sad, but you are still at peace. on some level, and you're kind of working on it and you want to get those things, that's totally fine. But do you see how like this kind of weird? I'd actually say
Yeah.
that you actually sound somewhat happy for
Yeah,
sure.
but it's funny because all this diagram, well, not this diagram, but like the peace thing, I actually already elaborated it in my mind. I was like, why am I so happy? Like, I should be sad because maybe that would make me fucking do something more, or like,
Yeah. So
I'm like, I'm too at peace for like my situation, maybe.
yeah, and I kind of get that, right? And this is where like I've seen this a lot with people that I work with. Even if you have a particular diagnosis, you can still be at peace and have like an active, some degree of like mental illness, right? Which is
Yeah.
also confusing for people. So what I'd say is that the key thing about whether you're happy is whether you're here or you're here. So your state of mind will determine whether you're happy or not. So if your state of mind is dominated by your ego, so if your mind is literally thinking about what other people think, and I have to find a way to come across as something because what I am or the way that people will perceive me is not enough. And for some reason, you're not able to channel this person. You're not able to sit with this person because when you sit with this person, you come across as really genuine. You're funny. You're very likable and charismatic. Like you form all these relationships online, but this is like the core of the problem. And this is not really psychiatry. It's really just a Buddhist understanding of the mind, which is that when our mind operates from ego, that's when we start to think all these things. And that's where like all these behaviors start to come out. Right? Because now, like, why do you lie? Because I have to come across to something. Why do you have to come across to something? Is because people can't read me and they're going to think I'm a weirdo.
Yeah.
They're not able to see this person. Whereas whether they're able to see it or not depends on whether you let yourself be that or not.
Yeah.
What do
I
you think
think
about that?
I think I realized that to some extent recently. The group of friends that I told you, I kind of made a vow for myself to be genuine, but I did it at first. They know a lot about like my issues, but they don't know the full story, and I spiced it up again slowly in time because of reasons.
Okay.
And but that made me realize that like I can form deep connections and people can like me a lot, like on a deep level, not just like this guy that is like extroverted, is cool, whatnot, but like I generally like form connections with people.
So let me ask you one question. And this is going to be the most important question. I don't know if you have an answer, but hopefully you can help us, Savian. How can you be more genuine? What makes it hard for you to be more genuine?
For me, uh, hmm, okay, online, the fact that I don't really have, well, the fact that who I am is tied to my real life experience, which is very empty and there isn't much going on. Like I just don't really have a life. So I feel like I don't know, maybe I can separate the two, but I just if I'm really myself and like I'm genuine about like I start being genuine about everything, and if I'm genuine about everything I just have to tell them, oh look, I am this person that doesn't go out and doesn't do stuff like I would like to, but so that kind of I wouldn't do that. Like I feel like people would think I'm a weirdo because I don't go out, despite me coming across like as a cool person maybe.
Okay. So we're going to learn a couple things, okay?
Yeah,
So you can be genuine without sharing all of your genuineness,
yeah.
right? So you
Mhm.
don't have to tell people, hey, I've been stuck at home for 5 years,
Exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
right?
We will touch on that. We will touch on that because I've been doing that with one person in particular, literally these days, and she seems to like me. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. So like, I'll ask you, like, what makes it hard for you to be genuine with people? Like, why can't you just be this person when you go out?
Oh, when I go out in person, I feel like online I can do that nowadays more.
Mm?
I feel like it has just been a reaction that I felt like when I was like more insecure, and it just built up with the same relationships, and those people now just think of me or something, so I can't really just break that and be like, oh look, I'm doing that literally right now. Like people are watching and they're gonna be like, oh,
Yeah, I was
this
honestly, Tavian, I was very surprised that after talking about body dysmorphia so much that like you're showing your face on stream.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's I have particular situations in which like if I eat, because like my jaw goes backwards, if I like make expressions and whatnot that are like in a certain way, but like on cam, I in this angle or like whatever, I'm just like I don't look that bad. Like I don't mind myself.
Okay.
And one thing, it's like when I look at myself less, like I don't check myself, that's something that I learned recently, like for like example, 2 weeks or something, I just avoid reflections. When I see myself, I'm like, oh, I don't look bad, because like usually I would have insecurities about other stuff too. So this definitely body dysmorphia, even if I have like a condition. I would just be like, oh, my eyes are a bit weird, my hair is a bit weird, my head is a bit weird, right? But when I don't check that for like 2 or 3 weeks or something, I'm just like, when I check myself again, I'm like, oh, this person that I didn't see for a while is like almost like a bit of a stranger, and like it looks okay.
Hmm. Okay. That I think
But
there's
yeah,
an interesting takeaway there about.
yeah, it's a little, yeah, yeah. And maybe
But
that can help other people too, because I've
yeah,
been
so
giving that
you
advice
know
to
what
some people.
what I
It's more,
would kind of think a little bit about is like being this person and what makes it hard for you to be this person when you go out because it does sound like you actually go out and you have,
a
it's
lot.
it,
What do you mean? It sounds like I go out.
I mean it sounds like you leave the house.
Yeah, but I don't really interact with people. Like I just don't. I'm out there. I just take walks, but I don't actually interact with people.
And
I just have earphones and I listen to music and think about stuff.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So I mean I think for people who even do go out some and do have some interactions, I think this discrepancy is really important. Where the more that we sort of operate from our ego, which is like, oh, these people think I'm weird. And this is where there's like another really important thing when you're this. So what the other thing that tends to happen is when we
Wait, and
operate from.
I thought, sorry, I
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I will add something because
go ahead.
I don't know why I didn't say it, but like when I laugh, I don't know why it doesn't bother me too much here, but in person, it's like I feel like I look way worse when I like express myself face-wise. Like when I laugh, when I I just feel like my looks just deteriorate further. So like for example, my nose drops and stuff like that because that happens. But like, you know, I'm just so I tend to be very bitch face, I guess.
Yeah, that's not going to help your social interactions.
Exactly, exactly. So that's definitely a big thing. I avoid laughing, or if I do, or like I do, but I just keep my mouth closed or like stuff like that. It's just, it's a bit of a mess. I know. Yeah,
That sounds hard, dude.
yeah. I've had a discussion with someone about this. I've talked to two people in particular about like my dysmorphia deeply, people knew that group of people knew that I had dysmorphia, but not really exactly what is going on. I talked to like two people in particular that right now are watching, I think. And I was like, I'm so exhausted of this life. This is like I can't anymore. You know, just I I feel like I'm reaching a point where I'm just gonna like do stuff and suffer until like I feel better because I don't know. I don't exactly know how to fix it. I don't know how to feel better about myself. So maybe I'm just gonna be, oh, I look bad, just leave looking bad, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real tragedy here is that I don't know that there are ways to fix it per se. Like in my
Mm.
clinical experience, body dysmorphia can be very hard to fix.
I actually, yeah, can I
But
say,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah. I will. So I thought about like a couple surgeries that would be like very big for my face, actually, like objectively, like measurements. I don't know what's, like not. I would literally like get nose surgery and my jaw surgery. And I feel like those would make me feel at least at peace with like going out. I think I would still have dysmorphia, but I think the jaw and the nose, not really. I don't really care that much about the nose, but the jaw thing, it's like if I get it fixed, I could actually eat outside and like feel normal because it's sort of a deformity, at least, you know. But the rest, I feel it's kind of disconnected. I still feel bad about it, but it's like, as I said, I can cope with it by not looking at mirrors and stuff like that. And once I start feeling better, it might be a bit in my head, but I feel that if I get my jaw fixed, I would just be okay with the amount of pain that would be lower of just interacting with people and thinking I'm like kind of ugly, but I don't really. It's not as big as my jaw. Like that. That's the main thing.
So I don't think there's. So I think that if you're thinking about getting surgery, that's absolutely something you should talk to a medical professional about.
I did, and it's like too expensive. So I like my plan was basically just study and like get my degree, get money, and fix my jaw and stay inside until then, and then just start having a life basically.
Well, I mean, if that's the plan, that everyone has to decide what plan is right for them. One thing I would encourage
Yeah.
you to consider is if you're saving up a pile of money for jaw surgery, that you consider seeing a therapist, which you also don't
Yeah.
have money for, maybe first.
Yes, that's also in the plans.
Because
I,
some data, I don't know the studies very well, but just so you understand, like generally what happens with people with body
Mhm.
dysmorphia is when they fix one thing with a surgery,
You find
they need
another.
to fix something else afterward, and
Yes,
it becomes sometimes a never-ending list of surgeries because the core problem doesn't get fixed.
I know. But that's the thing. It's a weird line to like it's because I generally have like this thing that is, but at the same time, maybe I shouldn't be as much bothered about it, right?
Well, so here's kind of like an interesting question. So if you got the surgery, what do you think that would change about your mind?
My mind, I would be like, okay, I can actually go eat now and interact with people and see where that leads. And I feel like for me, validation, it doesn't do much, but it kind of does. Even
Okay.
if I don't want to encourage it, but like just having, for example, in the period that I had like my ex, I went out more. I felt like I was worthy, I guess, in a sense.
Right.
Because
So
I was validated by someone else, which is not the optimal way to be, to live just by external validation, but sure, you know.
yeah, well, I mean, I think the trickier thing is like when people validate you, like if I said I think you have a nice smile, Tavian, how would your mind react?
Well, I said thank you. Just I am like, yeah, but you don't actually know that in certain angles, blah blah blah, or like in person, or like I have this teeth that is, stuff like that.
So let's just look at that for a second, right? So and I think this is what's kind of maybe I'll switch back to um, the interview, but
Okay.
give me a second. So I think we're kind of back to talking for a second. So let's understand a couple things. So you're saying that, okay, let's say you, so let's just like walk through the scenario, okay? I'm not recommending that you do get surgery or don't get surgery, but a couple of things that I've kind of observed in general is that when people get surgery, what they're looking for is a change in mind by a change in appearance. They think that their mind will start to think differently if they get surgery. And so
Mm.
what you're saying, and then you'll get validation, right? You're saying that, okay, like we get validation because people will say, what do you think they're going to say once you get surgery?
Uh, so that's an interesting thing because, oh my God, I don't even know how to elaborate all this thing. So like, well, I mean, people that don't know me, okay? People that don't know me will just be like, I wouldn't really say. You mean people that already know me and just go, oh, he got surgery, or just people in general? Like, I don't think they would say anything. They would just be, oh, this guy actually looks normal, which I don't think they do now. So it's like,
Okay, so if I told you that I think you look normal, What does your mind do with that thought?
I think in this particular situation, I look normal. And I actually look normal when I don't eat. And sometimes I look bad because of expressions, but in this case, I'm kind of comfortable.
Okay,
I mean,
I know this sounds kind of weird, Tavian, but I don't want you to sort of think about
not really black
yourself.
and white. Yeah, yeah.
But I want you to notice what your mind does. So when I say something that is validating, and everyone out there who's got some kind of self-esteem problem should really pay attention to this. When I say, I think you look normal, what does your mind do?
It starts to overthink and just like find ways in which it thinks you're not right in some way.
100%.
Yeah.
So when I say something, does it actually validate you?
To some extent. But it's also bad for me because I have this persona. This persona
Let's not
also
get there.
looks.
Hold on. Let's not make judgments. Let's just
Yeah,
first understand what happens within the mind, okay? So now what you're saying is that even though you even acknowledge that you look normal in this light,
yeah.
then your mind adds a but.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've seen, I have no idea if this is going to happen with you. What I'm concerned about is when people have some kind of surgery and people say, no one says, hey, you look normal now, bro. No one's ever going to say that. But even if someone did say, hey, you look good today, what your mind could do, and this is what's really terrifying, is it could say like, yeah,
my eyes.
Huh?
Yeah, but my eyes, my nose, my hair.
Or the only reason I look normal is because I had the surgery.
Interesting. So I would feel like, I don't think I would feel like that personally.
I don't know. We have no idea. My point is that you've got to be careful because sometimes when we look for an external fix, which by the way is what 70% win rate is, right? Because because the 70% win rate has nothing to do with the happy you, because you're already happy. You don't even, so this is where the sort of conflict comes in, where you recognize 70% doesn't mean anything to me. Which Tavian is that coming from? That's coming from the green Tavian.
Yeah.
What's coming from the red Tavian is I want the 70% win rate. And what does 70% win rate do? It challenges, I'm a weirdo, there's nothing interesting about me, all that. And so that's like all operating at the level of ego. And then below that is the level of self.
It's the virus in my head. Okay.
It is.
That's how a friend of mine called it. This virus in your head that makes you think you're not enough. I hate it.
That's a brilliant way to put it, right? And that's the problem, is that when you try to appease the virus in your head, what happens? You started exercising?
Yes. I started just getting better, I guess. Like externals.
And I think what that does is that builds up the green Tavian. But the virus in your head, no amount of exercise has let you leave the house.
Yeah. I feel like I just did all this self-improvement. I actually did something, but didn't really do anything. There is something missing.
So that's the key thing, right? Is because what you're working on is this bottom part. And this is why, like, it's weird that someone, like, if we were to ask, 10 people on the street, hey, if there's a guy who says he's got body dysmorphia, hasn't left the house, has no friends in real life, do you think this person would be happy? They'd say, hell no. How could that person be happy? But this is what's kind of weird, is like virus in your head is a great way to put it. That's a completely independent thing.
Yeah, props to him, I guess.
Yeah.
I think he also just messaged in the group being like, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, right? And so there's something that keeps us from, once we have a sense of our low self-esteem, and this is where, like, we can look at theories of trauma or whatever, right? People literally called you a gypsy. You had a friend who you thought you had a good relationship with that rejected you. There's all kinds of stuff that can convince us that we're weirdos, that we don't have something good, that whatever. And then what happens is that part tries to fix itself by, okay, like, if I wear fancy clothes, if I get a 70% win rate, since my life is boring on its own, I have to lie about 50% of it so that other people see me as cool. Bro, you're cool.
Thank you. I think that, but it's that's why I'm doing this.
So
right
do you see the conflict?
Yeah.
And so this is what's so challenging for people, is this is why I like this kind of yogic perspective, because the more that we operate when our mind is being run by the ego, all of the negative stuff is there. And when our mind is not being run by the ego, all the positive stuff is there. And so the real goal is to move. I mean, there are two goals here. One is you can fix that stuff up above, which you can do through things like therapy and stuff, which is like seriously like probably a good idea for you. So I know that you've got financial constraints, but and then down below,
I can get it, I think.
There's also this kind of like, this is where we're sort of starting to incorporate like mindfulness into therapy. But what is mindfulness adding? It's not truly therapy. Mindfulness is working on this other aspect. That once we start to develop mindfulness, you can even look at studies on things like ketamine and some of these like novel, psychedelic treatments that are being studied and stuff like that. Like, I really don't recommend people use them because we just don't know what the dangers are. And everyone hears about the positives. No one hears about the tragedies and the PTSD and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at what happens in the brain when we use some of these novel treatments, is they disconnect us from our ego.
Okay.
And I think the really tricky thing is that there are some scenarios in which you can be yourself. But there are some scenarios where...
There is one scenario that is scary, which is alcohol.
Yeah.
Same, just kills my anxiety. I just start being the friend of everyone.
Right?
Which is it's very scary. That's why a lot of people drink, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done a fair amount of addiction psychiatry work, and I think what a lot of people don't understand about addictions is that they're not problems, they're solutions. So the
coping mechanism.
It's way more than a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
It fixes your problems. So the hardest addictions I've ever had to treat, there's one person I'm thinking of in particular who had a really bad addiction to marijuana. And the problem was, people will say, oh, you can't get addicted to marijuana because you don't develop a physiologic tolerance. But the real challenge was this person felt normal when they were high.
Yeah.
They got to live the life that they see everyone else living when they're high. Everyone else is out there and they're able to have fun at a party. I can't do that. But when I'm high, I get to be normal and I get to participate in life. That's way more than a coping mechanism. It's like a ticket to actually live life.
Why weed in particular? Was the person very hyperactive or anything?
So that's a good question. So I think if we look at, once again, studies on neuroscience, we know that particular people have a set of neurotransmitters that are responsive to particular drugs more than others. So even if you look at people who use lots of drugs, oftentimes they will have one quote unquote drug of choice. And
that's genetic. So I remember reading some people are more prone to alcohol addiction for sure.
Yeah. So there is a genetic component. I said neurotransmitter change, but there is a genetic component to that. And there's likely a developmental component to that as well. Yeah. An epigenetic component as well. But, just kind of going back, I would strongly encourage you and everyone else out there who's like struggling with this dichotomy, because oftentimes people, even who have quote unquote self-esteem problems, can recognize that there is a part of me that's good. There's a part of me that's genuine. There's a part of me that I can be proud of. There's a part of me that's content. The problem is that our mind is not able to operate in that space, and that it gets hijacked by this other set of thoughts. It's almost like you're opening up like a new program in your brain, and the virus activates. And the real challenge, so you can sort of fix that, right? So things like therapy, and you can also work on the relationship between like these two things and where you sit on a given day.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of working on it, which is, it started with a group of friends. It didn't function properly completely, but it's getting a bit better. And as I said, like right now I'm talking to a girl that at the moment is like far away from here, is in her hometown. And I've been like, I didn't push my problems or like I don't really have anything going. I was more like, okay, yeah, this is who I am. Let's talk about like random topics. She liked me and I liked her, and I was like, oh yeah, but I don't really do much. I'm like in this period of like transition where I'm trying to like fix my life and like do stuff like study and just like be productive, but I don't really go out too much. But I would like to. And she was like, oh sure, yeah, we can do stuff together and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I found a bit of a middle ground here. Hope I don't fuck it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think the other problem that people tend to run into when they have a problem is no one wants the middle ground. You want the high ground. You want to go all the way to the top. You want to fix it, right?
Yeah, I guess that was the first instinct
Of
for me.
course. And who can blame you? Like you want to be comfortable in your
Yeah,
own skin. You want to be proud.
yeah.
You want to have that 70% win rate on League of Legends. You want to hit challenger that way,
No,
right?
I don't.
You don't want to be
That
that
game, get that game out of my life.
55% win rate scrub on challenger. Like who wants that? Like
Yeah,
I want to be cooler, right? I
yeah,
want people to be impressed when they see me, not think that I'm a weirdo. And so the other
yeah.
tricky thing is that if you want to like understand a couple of other principles, or I'll just share. So
Mhm.
when our mind is occupied by controlling the perceptions of others, that's when the ego is active.
Yeah,
So there's a big difference between I want people to think this way about me and this is who I am. Some people may like it, some people may not.
yeah. Makes sense. Trying to
Thoughts,
work on that.
questions?
Mm, don't really have. I feel like just feel like I'm on a good path to fix whatever. I feel like this interview is also like it's pretty big for me because it changed the relationship and how people see me, but I've been like fully genuine. And like a lot of things that I said and whatnot, that's they didn't expect, or like that's just me, right? They
When you say
they
they
they knew the
didn't
person.
expect,
Yeah, well, they knew the persona. Now they're like, what the fuck? This guy actually is not
you're
the way.
falling into the same trap.
Oh
You're
yeah, okay.
you see that?
I'm thinking about what they're thinking, sure.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. It's like I did that just so I can like not like
Oh,
I am who I am, and hopefully they're okay. Yeah, I'm doing it again. Like hopefully
right.
they're gonna accept me for it. Yeah, yeah,
You see? Oh, you did this interview to prove. You know, so
yeah.
I mean, if you say the interview was big for you, I think so too. I think it's been educational for all of
I don't
us.
think I did it to prove anything. I just felt like just stopped lying. So I'm trying
Yeah,
to like
I
this
get that.
part.
That's why I point out this crap at the end because I don't think that you've been trying to prove anything to anyone this whole time.
Yeah,
I do get the sense that this
for
interview has
myself.
been a step for you on your journey. It's been
Yeah,
another middle ground where like, hey, I'm going to show my face on the internet. I'm going to talk about these things. I'm going to be genuine. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to let people reject me or accept me. And how are you feeling right now?
um, proud of myself to some extent, I guess.
I'm
Uh,
proud of you too, dude.
Starting to even like with I want to talk about attachment issues, but I feel like I started being a bit more like like whatever. If she likes me, good. If she doesn't, no, good enough, good too. I should do that with friends too, but it's
Yeah. So I think there's something really cool about. So half the time, I don't know if it's really half, you're trying to make other people proud of you, right? You
yeah,
want other people to be impressed. And when you say, I'm proud of myself, that's the important thing,
yeah.
right?
That's been like a thing that started to happen more and more in the
Yeah.
recent
And
months
as
and
you are proud of yourself, that turns into this thing that we call confidence.
Mhm.
And confidence comes not from avoiding our problems, but actually facing them. And then what you
Yeah.
realize is like, oh, this was not, because I'm sure, I imagine that you thought through a couple of disaster scenarios about what could have happened today. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but
I thought about not being able to express myself properly, just making
right?
a fool of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? And did you make a fool of
I
yourself?
did I didn't I didn't think that would happen though. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it could happen, but most of I
Yeah,
think I'm
that
cool. I think
that
I'm fine.
confidence is really butting up with you. I can see that,
Yeah.
right? So there are times when people will think, "Oh my God, this will happen," but I'm grateful for what you've offered us today. I don't think it's about succeeding or failing, or I think all we really want to do in these conversations is just hear about the authentic experience of like what your life
Yeah.
is like,
Yeah, of course.
and I'm grateful to you for that. And hopefully we all learned something together about the mind and the ego. Hopefully that made sense. I don't know if it did or
Yeah,
not, but
no, I that a lot of this stuff I already like kind of uh,
Yeah.
explored because that's a lot of what I do, right? So
Yeah.
it's working even like as a
It's
I've
very,
always been self-taught in everything, even like
yeah,
anything I do, drawing, everything. It was just
that's
I
super
just
cool,
do
man.
it myself. So
Yeah.
seems to be working. So proud
Yeah,
of
cool.
myself.
Well, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, and that was pretty big for me, I think. So yeah, I hope I helped other people too. If you struggled with anything similar to me, maybe got some insights. So
Awesome. Well, take care,
cool.
Tavian. I'm pretty sure you helped a lot of people today, so thank you very much for that.
All right. Thank you, and
Take
thanks
care,
for
man.
having me. Bye bye.
Okay. Questions? Oh, I know everyone's saying get that girl. Let's time and place chat. Did he say love me? I didn't catch that. We love this guy. Yeah. So here's the thing to remember. I know it sounds weird. So we all think we're unlovable. We all think we're weirdos and that people won't like us. Right? And why do we think that? We think that because there are times in our life, usually when we weren't very socially aware, where we offered our authentic self to someone when we're like 10. And we're like, hey, I like you. Will you go out with me? And boom, they reject. And why do they reject? Because they're 10. And they don't know how to politely let someone down. They don't even know how to manage their own emotions when someone asks them out. Right? And so oftentimes what they'll do is like the 10-year-old will react. And we heard from Tavian today that literally like the first girl he asked out called him a gypsy and then blew up in his face. And like, that's going to leave a mark. The thing is, we carry that with us. We begin to believe, holy crap, I was vulnerable with this person. I put myself out there. What is the lesson I learned? Don't ever do that. And so we may live the rest of our lives trying to unbecome a gypsy, right? I have to control the perceptions of other people. Because the other really interesting thing is because in that moment, right, what's the lesson we learn? We learn that we get rejected because of a particular attribute. And this is like a wild example. I could not think of a better hypothetical. When we're like, this dude literally got called a gypsy. And that is absolutely an attribute of our identity. Right? It's not like you can't tell when you close your eyes and meditate what your ethnicity is. Like ethnicity is the way that the world reacts to you. And so what is the lesson that you learn? You learn the lesson that the shell that I show to the outside world determines whether people accept me or reject me. And then we start off on a whole different path of trying to create the perfect shell. And then we'll see all kinds of manifestations. Then we think about what does the shell look like from the outside? Because remember, it's a shell, like you're on the inside. And so then it creates all kinds of different behaviors. We can become overly accommodating. We can become doormats. We can become socially anxious, like whatever. Right? Sometimes, I mean, I don't know if this is consistent or what. Maybe there's body dysmorphia involved, like whatever. I need to look a particular way. But there's a whole spectrum of that, right? And this is what we call self-esteem. So we learn this lesson that the way that I project myself is what matters. And then we stop working on ourselves. Now, Tavian's a little bit different because he's been working on himself. And I think we see it, right? We see that he's confident. We see that I thought he looked okay, but he's not in a space to hear that, so that's fine. And notice as well, so this is the really tricky thing, is that sometimes when we seek validation, or we want, actually not seek, when we want validation, you have to be careful because your mind may reject it. And then you're in a lose-lose situation because I'm going to do all this work. So I've seen this with people who especially have like imposter syndrome. I'm going to do all this work to prove to other people that I belong here. And when I do this work, I'm going to ignore all of the positive validation because even if they say, hey, great job today, you really knocked that presentation out of the park. What I'm going to think, what my mind is going to think is, what are they not telling me? It's a game you cannot win. Right? Like, think about it. You're craving validation. And when someone even tries to give you positive feedback, you're like, what are you not telling me? Why are they saying this? Or what you'll do is you'll say, yeah, I know the presentation was good, but the only reason it was good is because this person was sick today, and if they were here, they would have done a better presentation, and then I wouldn't even be getting this compliment. If you really look at the construction of the mind, virus is a great word. It's a virus that will hijack whatever is happening on the outside world, and then you can never even build your self-esteem because you won't accept the validation. And then the cycle repeats, right? Because now I don't feel good about myself, so I need other people to praise me. And like, I really like where Tavian is, because like some people get to a point where they start to work on, and what you really have to do is, this is the crazy thing, is if you have low self-esteem, sometimes you got to work on yourself. It's not, I'm going to do this so that someone is proud of me. What you really need to do is, how can you be proud of yourself? And literally stop thinking about what other people think. So there's scientific studies on this. One really interesting technique that you can do. Okay? Originally in imposter syndrome. If you look at people with imposter syndrome, when they do a good job, their mind jumps to circumstances that are responsible for their success. And it literally does not think about, what did I do for my success? So people will ask the question, how can I be proud of myself? The way that you be proud of yourself is anytime you accomplish something, which each and every one of you is going to do. Your mind will jump to excuses why you accomplished it. Instead, think about, what did I do to deserve this? I'm not saying you did 100% because circumstances matter. But at the least, don't ignore what you did. I'm not saying you deserve success 100%, but the problem is that in your mind, you deserve success 0%. You literally do not think about it. And then we wonder, how do I be proud of myself? You actually stop and you ask yourself, what did I do to deserve this? And usually that phrase sounds like, what did I do to deserve this? This guy is feeding in mid. Oh my God, what did I do? What past karmas have I done to have this noob on my team? But you can use, what did I do to deserve this, for like positive stuff too. And we ask that question rhetorically, like, I didn't do anything to deserve this. That's incorrect. You did something. You showed up. You did some amount of preparation. You studied a little bit. You went out on a limb. You asked for help. There's something that you did. And you can give yourself a pat on the back for that tiny little bit. And the last thing that I think it's really important to take away is that when it comes to stuff like this, we oftentimes want to fix our problems. We want it to be gone. And that keeps us from the middle ground, right? It keeps us from moving one step forward. Why don't we want to move one step forward? Because one step isn't enough. And if it isn't enough, what's the point in doing it? This is the trick that your mind plays. And this is why we never get started. Right? And then a year goes by and you haven't done anything. And then another year goes by and you haven't done anything. And then you beat yourself up. It's like, man, if I'd started 2 years ago, imagine where I would be today. Easy for your mind to say that. The question is, why didn't you start 2 years ago? And the reason that you didn't start 2 years ago is because you listened to the same damn mind. And that mind said, if you start today, it's not going to be enough because this is going to take 4 years or 2 years. You all get that? So in order to overcome this, you need to do something a little bit stupid. You need to do things that are not enough. This is honestly, if you want one bit of advice to transform your life, it is do things that are not enough. I'm failing Spanish. What's the point in studying? There's no way I can get an A. Study. Do stuff that is not enough. Oh, it's too late for me to get a 6-pack before beach season. So I might as well not exercise, because your mind tells you it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. So be a little bit foolish. Do things that are not enough. Do it anyway. Exercise a little bit. Right? You'll be amazed at what your life will look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Everyone's talking about working out now. So for you, those of y'all that are paying attention in chat, right? That's like literally how I started working out. Study for 5 seconds. Yeah, because like so every time I get frustrated that I can't get things how I want them, hey, go team good enough? Absolutely. So let me ask you something. I'm inviting y'all to join Team Mediocrity. Who wants to join that team? No one wants to join Team Mediocrity, but that's if you want to be on Team Exceptional, you start by joining Team Mediocrity. And when you're on Team Mediocrity day after day after day after day, you don't shoot for the top, right? Because unless you're willing to accept mediocrity, you're not even going to get started. So start off by like, hey, at least I will become mediocre. I may not get a 6-pack, but at least I'm going to lose a couple of pounds. And the bizarre thing is it's people who are on Team Mediocrity day after day after day after day that end up on Team Exceptional. Same people. And this is the big scam, is like, we don't want to join that team because we think it's one thing, but it's actually something else. Yeah, so like Harley Q14 is saying, team just get off the couch. Now, let me ask y'all something. I would join team just get off the couch. Who else would join team just get off the couch? Like, this is great. Right? And a lot of people are saying me. Some people are like, I wouldn't join it. Team get off the couch is like, that's my team, honestly. Yeah, team get out of bed, sure. So Classic Tech is saying, what if you're stuck in team crap? Good question. So, what are the features of team crap? Team crap is about circumstance, not about action. Team get off the couch is about action, not about outcome. That's how you get off team crap. Team crap is about what you've accomplished, not what you did. And this is the tricky thing, is that team exceptional is also about what you've accomplished, not about what you did. So both of those are teams of outcomes. And then there's the team that does things, not accomplishes things. And that's how you get off team crap. So PD Fireflies, how do you hold your mind accountable to get off the couch? What a good question. So here's something to understand. So we showed up and we started streaming and we started doing YouTube and all this kind of stuff. And we have these kinds of lectures and we get these kinds of questions. How? So there are a couple of different options. One is you continue watching streams and YouTube videos and stuff like that until something clicks and there's a certain amount of, and the tricky thing with click is that things will unclick. So the biggest problem that people run into is they think if I watch the perfect video, it will transform my life. Doesn't work like that. You can get a small amount of inspiration, but the problem is as soon as the video is over, the inspiration will start to decay. But over time, hopefully it'll build and you'll start to build momentum. But this is also why we literally started a coaching program, because we realized that some people are willing to invest in having made progress in a certain amount of time. So what I would say is that if you want to keep trying on your own, that's what we're here for, right? We try to help people DIY it. But if you're tired of like trying on your own, or more importantly, You want to have moved. You want to have gotten off of the couch in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Then you probably need help. So definitely check out our coaching program. If there's something that's more mental illness oriented, like body dysmorphia or something like that, I definitely check out working with a therapist. But here's what people don't get. Everyone wants to do it on their own, and y'all will get there. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know? But I learned like firsthand the value of getting a lot of help. And what help really does, it's not that you're not going to get there. It's about your rate of acceleration. So part of the reason that we structure the program the way that we do is we're very outcome oriented and time oriented. People will wonder like, wait, why can't I do coaching for 3 weeks? I mean, you can start and then you can cancel. But the reason that we have the packages that are there is because of the outcomes that are associated with it. So the package length is based on scientific research that shows that like, okay, like what is the amount of time it takes for someone to make a substantial and hopefully sustainable change in their life. And so I think the real question is not how do you get started? Like you can use information and wait for inspiration. I think community is a really good place too. People that can hold you accountable. You also absolutely check out Discord. There's some really cool stuff around fitness accountability and stuff like that. The problem is that that stuff doesn't work as well as another human being like helping you do it. And so it's really up to you. And the main question that I would say is that the main thing for you to consider is when do you want it done by? Ask a Coach event is about to start. Okay. Okay, so if it's starting now, then y'all head over to Ask a Coach. And if y'all, so it's just so y'all know, so we've got different coaching events. I mean, different coaching events that are run on our Discord. So these are our coaches who will be there, and y'all can ask them questions like kind of like what we do on stream. Their answers are going to be a little bit different because their answers come from their own experience and stuff. I personally work with every coach on our platform, so they work with me for 8 weeks. And, you know, just to be confident that they can deliver like a high value, like level of service. And for those of y'all that are curious about it and stuff, like hop on, they're there to answer your questions. They'll talk about, you can ask them questions like how do you develop confidence or whatever. They also run some of our really awesome social sandbox events. So my favorite one recently was on Valentine's Day. We had a social sandbox where people practiced asking each other out. And we had 300 people just practice it, right? Because everyone's like, oh, I like this person. I like this person. I asked them out. They said no. So here's the wild thing. You can get better at asking people out, right? You can say, hey, I know you don't deserve to, I know you deserve someone better than me. And I know that you're amazing. And I know that I don't deserve even an iota of your, you know, toenail clippings. But please, please, please don't ask people out like that. And this is where like, holy crap, you've got all these emotions that take control of you. So what we try to teach our coaches to help people do is manage their internal emotions so it does not affect the way that they behave and what they say, right? So they'll do things like role play. Hey, let's like work through that insecurity. What are you insecure about? What do you want to say? Let's practice it. Let's separate out this mess of emotion that is your internal self from the way that you behave in the world. And we're going to work on that stuff, and we're going to work on this stuff. Okay? All right, so check out Ask a Coach. And for those of y'all that don't want to check out Ask a Coach, who should we raid? Thanks for the sub, Midnight Blue. Much appreciated. Raid my mom. I don't think my mom is Phil Jameson or Grubby. There should be a VOD on Twitch for sure. We'll raid Phil Jameson. Oh, it says subscriber only chat. So someone's asking a quick question. How do I get out of bed easier in the morning? So there are a lot of reasons why it can be hard to get out of bed, but I'm going to share with you all one really interesting physiological trick that may help you get out of bed easier in the morning. So our body has a natural circadian rhythm, and we also have a sleep cycle. So y'all are probably familiar with this, but like our sleep starts, there's like phase 1 sleep, and then we kind of go through the sleep phases, and then we enter REM sleep and stuff like that, okay? If you wake up, and the average sleep cycle is about 90 minutes. If you wake up in the middle of a sleep cycle, it is hard to wake up because your mind hasn't completed it. If you wake up in the window between sleep cycles, it is actually easier to wake up. So y'all may have observed this, that sometimes you can take a nap, right? And you wake up and you're super groggy. And sometimes you can sleep less and you can wake up and feel more refreshed. So this is what's really bizarre. If you have trouble waking up in the morning, like let's say you have trouble waking up at 7 a.m., try waking up earlier. Try waking up 1 hour earlier or 2 hours earlier. Because what we all assume is that, oh, I will wake up after 8 hours of sleep and then it'll be easy for me to wake up. Not necessarily. So sometimes you need to wake up after 6 hours of sleep or 5.5 hours, or wake up 2 hours earlier. And then you may be tired at the end of the day, but waking up will be easier. And then if you're tired at the end of the day, you can go to sleep. And then you still wake up at like 5:30 or 6. So one really interesting technique is if you're having trouble waking up and getting out of bed, you may be waking up in the middle of your sleep cycle. So instead, and this is where oftentimes we can't shift it later, right? So you can wake up naturally if you let it finish. But since we can't do that, what we actually want to do is wake up even earlier. And it'll be easier to wake up and you'll feel that more body fatigue as the day goes on, which is actually totally fine. And then you turn in early and then you get a full 8.5 hours of sleep and you wake up at 5:30. So that's how you reset your sleep schedule. Does that make sense? The average is 90 minutes. This is where things get complicated because the nature of the sleep cycle changes over the course of the night. So for example, the first sleep cycle you go through has a very small amount of REM sleep. And as you go later on through the night, the amount of REM sleep increases with subsequent sleep cycles. So there's some individual variation, and then there's also progression over the course of the night. My man raided? I couldn't raid. It said it was subscriber only. Yeah, so Geronimo 2521 is saying, I wake up, but then I have trouble getting out of bed. I don't want to leave the bed. Instead, I scroll on my phone for a while. So if your brain can get dopamine while staying in the comfort of your bed, it's not going to get up. You want a simple solution? Keep your phone in the next room. Keep your phone out of arm's reach. No phones within 5 feet of the bed if you're having trouble getting out of bed, but you're not having trouble waking up. Okay, did people go on the raid? I'm confused. Can you give a short answer for being anxious about a presentation? Absolutely. So I used to be, I know this sounds kind of weird, I used to be very nervous talking in front of other people. And now, then I started teaching and I started streaming on Twitch and all this other kind of stuff, right? So like now, and this past year I gave a keynote speech at a conference for like 600 people. So like, how do you do that, right? How do you get over your fear of presentation? There's one really simple trick. So usually if you're afraid or anxious before a presentation, you're thinking about what other people think. If you want to be better at giving presentations, don't think about what other people think. Think about what you have to offer. So now every time I go, I still feel the anxiety before I go on stage. I feel it every time before I stream. But what do I think to myself? It's not about whether I do a good job or a bad job. I may screw up. That's okay. I know it sounds kind of weird. Instead, what I recognize is, hey, I'm here for a reason. I'm here because there's not opportunity, but someone has literally asked me to do this. if you're giving a presentation, right? And what you're there to do is share something with these people. And that's what you should think about first and foremost. That I'm here to offer these people some kind of expertise or summary of my knowledge. And that's what I'm going to do. I've also helped a lot of medical students prepare their presentations in hospitals. So in medical school, a big part of it is, how do you give a good presentation? Your presentation needs to be concise, and it needs to be focused, and it needs to include all the important information. But there's so much information. How do you know what to include? And so what you should include is, like, imagine you're the only person there and you know your patient, and that and they're being graded, right, by like their attendings and doctors and like chiefs of services. They're being graded and they're like, oh my God, what if I get a bad grade? And they get nervous and their presentation comes out stumbling and then they beat themselves up. Because these people will write your letters of recommendation. They'll make phone calls to the chief of surgery at places like Yale University or, UCSF or Harvard or whatever. And they'll say, hey, this is a star candidate. We think you should take him. This is what's on the line. So you want to impress those people. You're not there to impress them. You're there because there's someone sick in the hospital. And what do you need to communicate to this chief of surgery here so that they can take care of this human being? It's what do you have to offer? Because the chief of surgery doesn't have the time to read everything that you have the time to read, because they're taking care of 15 patients and you're taking care of 2. So what does this person need to know? So if you're having trouble with a presentation, think about what you have to offer, not about what they think or what they will think or how you'll look, because that's not why you're there. So even today, how do I know? Oh my God, how do I know if I can answer the questions? I don't know if I can answer the questions. What if I give the wrong answer? What if I give the bad answer? That's a problem and I can learn from it, but I'm here to offer what I have. That's it. And that's what I focus on. It makes it really easy. This is what I have to give. Hey, I'm giving y'all a presentation today about the French Revolution. And in these next 20 minutes, I've read hundreds of pages around the French Revolution. And in these next 20 minutes, I can boil down what the French Revolution was about, why it was important, how it started, and what we can learn from it. That is even applicable today. That's how you put together a presentation, right? Think about what you have to offer, not what people will think. And then offer it 100% authentically. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. You can't control that, right? You can't control what people like and don't like. All you can control is what you offer. And so put 100% of your energy into offering the best thing that you can instead of stressing over what they will like or won't like. Think about all the mental energy that you waste trying to make people happy instead of actually doing something. Instead of working on your presentation, you're trying to think about what people will want. Instead, just work on the presentation and offer it. Okay. You're very welcome, James Zero. Thank you for asking it. We would be nothing without y'all. So Geronimo 2521 is asking, what if you come across as boring and no one wants to listen to your presentation? So who are you thinking about there, Geronimo? Good question. Right? And a really good point from Doge Boss. Does rejection sensitivity come into this? Absolutely. And rejection sensitivity comes into it because here's the problem, right? So we have a video about rejection sensitivity on YouTube that y'all should definitely check out. The thing about people with rejection sensitivity is their brain is wired to interpret neutral stimuli as negative. And their brain is wired to discount positive stimuli. And their brain is wired to amplify negative stimuli. So you have a filter that doesn't let you see the good, turns the neutral into bad, and amplifies the negative. And that's how you arrive at the conclusion that these people don't like me. It's because you're literally ignoring 70% of the information. And that's like scientific. That's like literally what happens in the brains of people who are rejection sensitive. They've done studies on this stuff. Okay, who are we rating again? We can rate Shy Lily. Buy for... Wait. Is this... I don't see the raid thing. Is it actually rating? But I don't see a... I can't see it on here. Let me see if... Okay. I see it now. All right. So check out Shy Lily. Send them some positive vibes, and we'll see y'all next week. Take care, everybody.